Hello there everybody and welcome back to Movie Square, and today is going to be my entire horror movie collection video. Now, before anyone subscribes or anything to this channel, if you're new here, just to let you guys know, this is not a physical media based channel. The only physical media based videos that I do is this one once a year. So just to let you guys know and give you a heads up, if physical media is what you're looking for, this channel probably is not for you. But if you're into horror movie reviews, top 10s, rankings, horror news, live streams, everything horror discussion related, then this channel might be for you. So I'm just letting you guys know I'm not going to be showing the latest 4K boutique label or anything like that, or my latest horror movie pickups. If you want any of that, I've got another channel here called Movie Worm, which I'll leave down below in the description. If you want to go and see all my pickups that I do every few weeks or whatever, I'll do it on that channel, and I'll leave the link for you guys down below. Now, not all of these movies behind me here are horror movies. I've been doing it shelf by shelf. So I've got the first shelf here, and you might see little cuts in the video here and there and movies disappearing behind me, because when I get to them shelves, I'll just be taking off the horror movies. And there are about 450 horror movies here. I think it's over 450 horror movies. I logged them all in my letterboxd. And some of these horror films, people may not consider them full horror movies. It all depends on your personal opinion of what is a horror movie, but most of them are full horror movies. But people might class some of them as thrillers and stuff. I've just threw everything horror related or movies with horror elements. I threw them in there. So let's just get into it now. There's no point carrying on me babbling, is there? You're going to hear enough of that, me talking about all these movies. I am going in alphabetical order for the most part, and I'm going to start with the numbered movies here. And if they are a little bit out of alphabetical order, my little lad did come in and messed them up a little bit, and I had to pick them all up off the floor, which was really annoying. So if they are a little bit out of order, I do apologise. So let's just get into it now with the first movie in this collection. And again, this is one people may or may not consider horror, but I think it's got quite a big horror element to it. And I'm sorry if there's any glare here, guys. I cannot see the camera, but I'm trying to do my best to avoid the glare. And that is 10 Cloverfield Lane, a really good isolation horror movie where something is happening above this bunker and these characters are trapped down there. You got John Goodman in there and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who's a great actress. John Goodman is on fire in this movie, and he's a really intimidating guy. So really, really good movie, this one. I highly recommend it. Next up, we got one that I watched only recently, and that is 10 Rillington Place, a true story based on the serial killer John Christie. Richard Attenborough plays this killer so well. He's like a really nice guy to everyone in the neighborhood, but he's really got a deep, dark inside to him, really. And we've also got Judy Gleason and John Hurt throwing great performances here. Really sad what happens with John Hurt's character in this movie. Highly, highly recommend this film. I thought it was fantastic. Great 70s horror there. Next up, we have the double pack of 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later, which is something I'm probably going to rewatch again soon, because we do have 28 Years Later coming. So I'll probably review these two on the channel leading up to that. And I like 28 Days Later better. It's the one I've watched more. I've only seen 28 Weeks Later once. Can't remember too much about it. I know Ricky Hartnett's in there, who I love in the Rise of the Foot Soldier movies. But 28 Days Later is a fantastic zombie/virus movie. I did have fun with 28 Weeks Later from what I remember about it. But yeah, both really fun movies. Sorry. Oh, there, just spilled some Blu-rays there. Next up, we have 30 Days of Night starring Josh Hartnett. I think it's a vampire movie, but I think it's based in, is it like Sweden or something, where it's nightfall for 30 days, something like that. I haven't seen it for a very long time, but I remember quite enjoying it. It's due a rewatch, this one. I watched it when it first came out, really. Sorry if I do lean over there, guys. I'm putting them all in a new pile. Next up, we have the Alien quadrilogy. I'm thinking about picking up Alien and Aliens on 4K. Aliens is not out on 4K at the time of this recording, but it is coming. But this is one of my favourite Blu-rays that I own. It's like a lovely little box set with the first 4 movies. And love Alien. I think it's one of the best horror movies ever made. Aliens is more of an action movie with horror elements. I don't know if I class it as a full horror movie, but it's probably in my top 5 films of all time. I absolutely love Aliens. I watch it constantly. Alien 3 is one I've only seen once, but I really enjoyed it. I don't get the hate. You know, maybe if I rewatch it, I might see the problems, but I really enjoyed it when I watched it. And Alien Resurrection is one I've seen a couple of times. Yeah, it gets worse on every watch. It does get a little bit dated, that one, but the first two are where it's at. To be fair, though, Alien 3 is really good as well. Next up, we have one I don't like at all, and that is Alien Covenant. I actually think I prefer Alien Resurrection. I wasn't really feeling what Ridley Scott was going for with this movie, and Prometheus just didn't work for me at all. I'm really looking forward to Alien Romulus, though, and I'm hoping Fede Alvarez can bring it back. There's a good shower scene at the end of this movie, though, which I really like, but not because there's naked people in it. I just thought it was really well done. But overall, I did not really enjoy this film. It was a bit of a mess. Next up, we have All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. Amber Heard. I thought this was a cool little indie flick when I watched it back in the day. I think all these guys in school in love with this Mandy Lane, and they're getting picked off one by one. Good little twist towards the end as well. I remember this not being too bad. American Psycho, Christian Bale, it's absolutely on fire in this movie. I've seen it a couple of times now. Yeah, brilliant film. I just, it's so dark comedically, but I laugh my ass off at some of the scenes in this movie. Christian Bale, man, I love the way he's just obsessed with having the best business cards and looking his best and stuff. Yeah, it's a fun little flick, this one. Next up, we got Annabelle, which I heard was terrible going into it, but I didn't mind it. I kind of wish they would have delved into the Annabelle character a little bit more before she went in the doll, because it just felt like a throwaway to get the things moving with the doll. But overall, this wasn't bad. Annabelle Wallace, I think, is in this. She carried the movie. She was fantastic, who you may know from *Malignant*. Next up, we have Annabelle Creation, which is a prequel, and it all takes place in this nunnery. And this one was probably the best out the trilogy. I really like this. It was just a fun movie. One of the better ones in the Conjuring universe. Next up, we have Annabelle Comes Home. I think this is where the doll comes to the Warrens' house, and this daughter is getting babysat by these two teenage girls, and some more stuff weirdly starts to happen in the house. It's not bad. I actually think I prefer the other two, though, which might be controversial, and I like the first one a little bit more. Next up, we have the Anaconda box set from 88 Films. I recently watched the first one, and I'd seen it before on VHS back in the day, and the CGI is absolutely terrible, but it's such a fun movie. Jon Voight is on he's so bad in the movie, it's good. You got Jennifer Lopez in there, Owen Wilson. There's a few other people in there. It's a mad cast anyway. But yeah, there's all sorts of cast members in there that have gone on to do really good things. But I haven't seen Anaconda Hunt for the Blood Orchid yet, or the third or fourth one. I've heard 3 and 4 are really bad. But one day I'm going to just binge these and probably do a ranking on the channel at some point. I'm actually looking forward to them. I can sometimes appreciate horror movies that are so bad they're good. So next up, we have An American Werewolf in London. This is the standard Blu-ray. I probably should have upgraded this to a better 4K set or something from Arrow. But yeah, my second favourite werewolf movie of all time. My number one will come along later on. But brilliant practical effects. Really scary moments in this movie, like the nightmare scenes are really creepy to watch. I remember the first watch this and I was like, weren't expecting it. I was just expecting a werewolf movie. Them dream sequences, man, they're dream sequences done right. So yeah, I really like this one. Next up is Apollo 18. Not really a big fan of this movie, I'm not gonna lie. It's a found footage movie that I can't remember if it's on the moon or Mars. I can't quite remember. Yeah, to the moon. The moon. But it's just these weird little creatures on the moon that he finds, and it's too many shaky cam movements. It's not really a great found footage movie, in all honesty. And I am a fan of found footage. Next up is The Box. Really good concept where the stranger, played by Frank Langella. I always get mixed up between him and the guy who plays Dracula. Why has that gone out my head? I should know that. Christopher Lee. How did that go out my head? I always not get mixed up with them, but I just think they have a similar look to them. But this Frank Langella knocks at Cameron Diaz's house and says, if you push this button, someone you don't even know will die, but you'll get £1 million. And I asked everyone in my work, would they do that? And they all said, yeah. And I was like, I wouldn't be able to live it myself. It just shows you, doesn't it? But yeah, something weird things start to happen after that. It's a good concept, but I think the movie could have been better, to be honest. Next up, we have The Boy. I was expecting the worst from this. I bought this when Bram's The Boy 2 was coming out, just to see what it was all about, because we went to see the second one. And you know what? This one quite surprised me. I thought it was pretty good. It's like a killer doll movie, but is it a killer doll? It's not bad. Attack the Block, more of a sci-fi action movie this, but I just threw it in because it's got aliens and stuff in there attacking this city block. Some fun characters in here. Jodie Whittaker, is it? I'm gonna try and not to do this throughout the video, guys, and look at the back and see what cast members are in the movie and stuff. But Jodie Whittaker, she's really great in this one, so I quite enjoyed this. Next up, we have Takashi Miike's Audition. I watched this ages ago on DVD, and really, really great twist towards the third act of this movie. It's about a guy who auditions. He's like this rich guy, and he lets all these women audition to be his wife, which is just a strange concept anyway. But yeah, some dark moments in this one. I highly recommend it. Next up, we have The Babadook. I wasn't really a big fan of this one. I know that people say that the movie plays on mental health and stuff like that, but I just hated the kid. And I know you're meant to hate the kid, but man, I done a worst horror movie characters video, and he was in it. I just hate the way he's screaming his ass off and stuff. I wasn't a big fan of this, I'm not going to lie. I know people love it, but... Next up, we have Beetlejuice. And I've got to say, I'm not really big on this movie. I think it's just a little bit too wacky and out there for me. But I'm going to give it another go when Beetlejuice 2 comes out to see if I can get a little bit more love for it. But I've watched this twice now and it just doesn't really hit home with me. I'm not going to lie. But I really like the dinner scene. I think that's kind of fun. Next up, we have Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, one of his best movies, in my opinion. Really creepy at times, where all the birds are just waiting outside the school for the children. I just think it's an absolutely brilliantly made movie, and it's got that real 60s feel to it. I think this was made in the 60s. Yeah, 1963. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I do have plans to review this on the channel and do a little mini horror Alfred Hitchcock series at some point. Next up, we have one that I have not seen, unfortunately, and I probably should have watched this by now, but I only really got into Giallo a couple of years ago, to be honest, and that is The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. It's got a little rip in there because I bought this from a shop over here called CEX, and they put these little stickers on, and they're a nightmare to get off. And I probably should have went about that a better way, and it was either take this back or buy a brand new version, but I got it for so cheap, and this is actually a 4K. So I'm going to watch the movie. If I like it, maybe I'll buy it again and get a better box art. But for now, we've just got this. So yeah, it's a nice thick box set there. I've heard a lot of great things about this movie, just have not got to it yet, unfortunately. Next up, we have Blade, which is a movie I used to think was the best movie ever made. Watched it constantly on VHS. And it still holds up to this day as being a great movie, but the CGI is awful. I think it was kind of awful for the time, to be honest. Wesley Snipes is awesome in this as a vampire hunter. Love his little one-liners and stuff. The action is great. Stephen Dorff is an awesome villain. Great big vampire movie. With one of the best openings to a horror movie ever. Blade 2. A lot of people say this is better than the first. I do not agree with that, but I still think it's a really good sequel, and it's got Dracula in there and stuff. But yeah, not bad. Blade Trinity, which is another sponsor for Apple, basically. There's just Apple iPods here and there, and it keeps showing them. It's like, Apple definitely paid this movie to advertise that, which kind of really does my nut in about the movie. I hate it when movies do that, and it's not really a good sequel, to be honest. Wasn't a big fan of this one. The Blair Witch Project is one of them CEX stickers I was talking about there. probably the best found footage movie ever made, in my opinion. The first time I watched this, I could not sleep all night. I was terrified. I was sweating. I was seeing things in my room. The first movie that, well, not the first movie that truly terrified me, but one of the few that has terrified me in my lifetime. Just, it felt so real at the time. I couldn't believe it. I watched it recently with my wife. She'd never seen it, and she was quite scared by it, so it still got that effect, I think. Next up, we got Blood Rage, which is a Thanksgiving movie, if I remember correctly, and this guy, it's like these twins, the mother is murdered, I think, at the start of the movie, and one of the twins goes away for the murder for 10 years, comes back, and the killing starts happening. So, yeah, it's not bad. I had quite a fun time with this one. Low budget horror movie. And when I said my young son came and messed the pile up a little bit, this one probably should have been before the Blair Witch Project. Before Blood Rage, sorry. And that is the Blair Witch remake. I quite enjoyed this one, from what I remember. I've only seen it once. It wasn't bad, though. I thought it was going to be terrible, but it wasn't bad. The Bone Collector. I remember not thinking this one was all that great. I was in the mood to watch a crime thriller movie, and I thought, you know what, The Bone Collector there, I've got it upstairs. I've never actually seen it. And it was quite a little bit of a disappointment. I think I was expecting 7 levels of movie, which I really probably shouldn't have. It was okay, but yeah, it's not great. Next up, we have a movie that came #1 in my top 10 first time horror watchers of 2023 video, and that is Bull. Now, people may not consider this a full horror movie, but when the movie is over, I do think it is. I do think this is a horror movie. And that is Neil Maskell, who plays this character called Bull, who is absolutely terrifying in this movie. He's just someone you do not want to cross paths with. He is killing people left, right, and centre. He shows no remorse. The movie is absolutely brutal, and it's full of horrible, horrible characters. Like, horrible as in evil people. I highly recommend this movie. It's a great British thriller / horror movie with a great performance at the heart of it. Fantastic film. Next up, we have a horror comedy, The Burb, starring Tom Hanks, one of my favourite movies of all time. Watched this so many times now in my lifetime. I love the Klopeks who live next door. But basically, they move into the street, and Tom Hanks and his friends think they are murderers because they never come out the house, and they try and investigate what's going on. Really, really fun film. Highly recommend it. Next up, we have Burial Ground. A lot of people do like this film, but I just wasn't a fan of it at all. One of the worst zombie movies I think I've ever seen. I just wasn't into it at all. It just did nothing for me, unfortunately. Next up, we have The Burning, probably my favourite video nasty, to be honest. I absolutely loved this film when I first watched it. Do a rewatch, actually. It's been a while, but the raft scene in this was one of the best slasher movie kills I've ever seen. It's weird that he uses these big gigantic scissors for killing people. A strange weapon of choice, really, but it makes it work in this movie. So it's basically about this caretaker who's burned to death, and he comes back a few years later. Sorry, not burned to death, bitten very badly. Comes back a few years later to murder the camp, the people in the camp. A lot better than some of the Friday the 13th movies as well. I highly recommend this one. Cabin Fever, watched this recently for the second time because I was doing an Eli Roth ranking. You can find all these videos on my channel, guys. I mean, at this moment in time, there's not too many videos, so instead of leaving them all in the links down below, you can probably easily find them on my channel. But yeah, Cabin Fever, and this is so out there and wacky. Eli Roth is just a strange movie maker. There's so many jokes in here that just feel out of place and stuff. There's some really great gore as well about this virus that's taken over these people in a cabin, basically. So yeah, it's got some real Evil Dead vibes and stuff in there. I quite enjoyed it, but it's got major problems. Cabin in the Woods, not... Oh, I thought I'd gone out of order there, sorry. Cabin in the Woods, this is a movie that has a really strange third act that I didn't quite see coming, but it works. It's a movie that tries to do something new and bring something fresh to the table, and I think it did succeed for the most part. So, not a bad film. You got Chris Hemsworth in there before he was Thor and stuff. Next up, we got The Call, starring Halle Berry, who works at this emergency response board. where they take emergency calls, basically. And this girl has been kidnapped by this guy, and she's trying to track him down, basically. Now, this wasn't bad. I definitely enjoyed the Guilty on Netflix, starring Jake Gyllenhaal a little bit more. Actually, the very same concept as this. I think that one's a little bit of a better movie, but this isn't bad. Next up, we have a movie that's in my top 10 horror movies of all time, and that is Candyman. Real gritty, violent, going for a horror movie, a pure horror movie, this one. Helen, who wants to investigate the legend of Candyman, and if you say his name in the mirror 5 times, he will come for you. She does it, and her life just starts to go in a big spiral downwards, basically. Tony Todd is excellent as Candyman in this. One of the first horror movies I watched that did actually scare me, so yeah, brilliant film. Based on The Forgotten by Clive Barker, I believe. Which all takes place in Liverpool, where I'm from in that book. I haven't read the story, but I believe it all takes place in Liverpool. So, yeah, that's a nice little link there, I suppose. Can't find the word. Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. For the longest time, I thought this was Helen on the front of this cover, and it isn't. It's the main character in the movie. It's not bad, it just is jump scare city, though. This movie relies way too heavily on jump scares, unlike the first film, which is done to perfection. It's okay, I don't love it, though. I recently bought this one because it's only just become available on Blu-ray, but I've never actually seen this one, and I've heard so many bad things about it, but I wanted it anyway to fill in my Candyman collection, and as Candyman Day of the Dead. I'm going to try and watch this soon, just so I can say I've seen them all, but I don't know where. I'm just going to find the opportunity, but I'm not expecting great things from this. But that cover art is unbelievable. And then we do have the Candyman remake, which I actually quite enjoyed. Near the Costa done a pretty good job of this. Some really nice shots involving the kill scenes and stuff. There's one where you just see it through an apartment window, which I thought was excellent. Don't know if I was a massive fan of the ending, but yeah, I think this is a really good remake, or spiritual sequel, if you like. Next up, we have Brian De Palma's Carrie. I think this might have been the very first Stephen King adaptation. Was it? Or was it Stephen King's first book? I think it's the first of something anyway. But yeah, really good movie, this one. It has one of the most annoying horror movie characters in Sissy Spacek's mother in this. But it's basically about a girl who's bullied at school, and she sort of takes revenge on them by using this power she inhabits, and you're kind of on her side. We've got John Travolta in there as well, and Nancy Allen from RoboCop. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. Great Stephen King adaptation. We do have the Carrie remake, which unfortunately I have not seen yet. I'll get to it at some point, starring Chloe Grace Moretz. Next up, we have Castle Freak. Now, this is always a VHS I used to see in the video shop. I was always pulled in by the cover, but it wasn't actually this cover. Oh, the alternative cover is not the same, unfortunately, as the one in the VHS shop. But I always wanted to watch it, and when it came to Blu-ray, I finally picked it up. Not a great movie, to be honest. Just this freaky, monster-looking thing living in the bottom of this castle, and he wants to rape this woman. Yeah. Next up, we have Stephen King Cat's Eye. Really good anthology movie. I definitely like the first story better, with James Woods in, and he's trying to quit smoking, and this company will make you quit because they follow you around everywhere, making sure you don't have a cigarette and stuff. Thought that was a really fun story. The second story is quite good as well, where this guy is betting on this other guy walking around this balcony, and he bets he can't do it, or he'll fall, and he bets he's going to fall, but he's doing things to manipulate him, trying to fall. The third one was my least favourite story, with Drew Barrymore, when she gets this cat as a pet, and there's this little weird goblin running around the house. But yeah, it's not bad. The Chernobyl Diaries, pretty good found footage horror movie that all takes place in Chernobyl. I quite enjoyed this one. I thought they did a good job of using the location to its full advantage. Cherry Falls, not a bad little 90s slasher flick starring Brittany Murphy. It's not done as well as Scream or anything like that, but it's quite a fun time. Just say, basically, it's about this killer is only killing people who are virgins. So this all these people get together and decide to lose their virginity in this house so no one will kill them. But my biggest problem with that movie is the police officer. I think it's the guy off Michael Biehn. Yes, Michael Biehn off Terminator. He decides that this killer is only killing virgins because 2 people died. Couldn't that have just been a coincidence? Next up, we have The Children. Not a bad movie about these families with their kids go to this lodge in the winter, and the kids turn a bit sinister and try and kill all the parents. I've watched this twice now. It's not bad. Next up, we have the Children of the Corn box set. Now, Children of the Corn is one that I have seen, and this is actually on 4K. I've got to admit, I wasn't a big fan of this movie, so it really did not push me to watch the other 2. I just couldn't really get into it, and it's got Linda Hamilton there, who I absolutely love, but she couldn't really save it. Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice is a movie I owned on VHS back in the day, but I couldn't really get through it. I always used to watch snippets of it here and there, so I'll have to return to that at some point. And then we do have Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest, which I have heard is one of the better Children of the Corn movies. But I'm going to have to rewatch the first one and then get to the other 2, because when I watched the first one, it kind of just made me not want to watch the other 2 because I wasn't a big fan of the first one. But I will get to them at some point. I know there's about 12 of these or something now. So a guy I watch called Cody Leach, he is my favourite horror YouTuber. He said it's the worst horror franchise he's ever had to sit through. But getting on to a great horror franchise now, we do have Child's Play. Yeah, seen it so many times. I love the whole build-up of this one, whether you don't know it's Andy or Chucky committing all these murders. I think it's just a really well done, well-built anticipation. A well-built movie with anticipation and tension. And when Chucky finally comes alive, it's one of the best moments in horror history, I think. When he's calling Andy's mother a stupid bitch and stuff like that. Chucky is up there with Freddy, with my favourite horror icon. It's very, very hard to split them as who is the best. Next up, we have Child's Play 2, my favourite in the entire franchise. I've done a top 10 favourite horror movies, and this came second. Top 10 most rewatchable horror movies. I used to rent this from the VHS shop all the damn time. I absolutely love this film. It's one of my favourite slashers. Chucky at his absolute best in here. And he kills Beth Grant in that movie, who's just a pain in the ass in every movie she's in. Child's Play 3 is a movie that I actually really like. I like the old setting of the army school and stuff, the military school. Chucky, again, is on form here. I love that moment where the barber is going around going, "Presto, you're bald," after he's cutting everyone's hair. And then he does it to Chucky, and Chucky turns around and slices his neck and goes, "Presto, you're dead." Gets me every time. But yeah, bit of controversy in this one. In the UK in 1993, a young kid was abducted called James Bulger and killed by 2 10-year-olds, and everyone just went to town on Child's Play 3. It was taken off every shelf and everything, so it was really, really hard to get hold of. So for the longest time, I couldn't watch this film. My mum didn't want me watching it. I couldn't find it anywhere. But I think it's not died down. It still angers everyone in this city, of course. But it's back on the shelves now. Put it that way. Next up, we have Bride of Chucky. This might be one of my least favourite movies in this franchise. I actually prefer Seed of Chucky. It's not bad though. It's a watchable movie. I'm just not sure on the whole dark gothic style of it. It kind of just doesn't work for me. And the 2 main leads, really, I don't like them. But Tiffany is a really good introduction. She's a cool character. Then we have Seed of Chucky, which I will defend. I had a lot more fun with this than Bride of Chucky. If I went to cinema to watch this at the time, I probably would have hated it. But as time's gone on, I can just appreciate it that it's going for a fun type of vibe. And John Waters getting killed in this. He said it was always one of his desires to be in a Chucky movie, so they put him in this film and kill him. But yeah, I quite enjoy this. Some plot holes in this, though, I must admit, regarding Jennifer Tilly and stuff. Next up, we have The Curse of Chucky, probably one of the top 3 Chucky movies. This actually brought it back and just made it a little bit more mellow. It takes place between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, I believe. But Brad Dourif's daughter, Fiona Dourif, is in this, and she's like the main central protagonist. Yeah, pretty good film for the straight to VOD movie anyway. And then we got Cult of Chucky, which is my absolute worst in the entire franchise. I don't like the fact that all these different Chuckies are coming alive and stuff, and it kind of feels like oh, why can't I remember the guy's name? Don Mancini. Kind of feels like he doesn't know where to go now with this, but I've only ever seen Chucky season 1. I haven't checked out season 2 or 3, so maybe he does have a vision. I will check them out soon though. And then we do have the Child's Play remake, which I thought was pretty good. I didn't like the look of the doll, but I liked the fact that it uses modern technology and stuff to basically come alive and cause havoc instead of someone going into the doll. I think that would make a lot more sense in this day and age, put it that way, but it's not bad. I quite enjoyed it. And then we do have a documentary called Living with Chucky. I've really gone into my horror documentaries lately. In fact, movie documentaries in general. And I watched this one not long ago. It's pretty good. It just doesn't do it as well as Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street documentary, which spends a really long amount of time on each movie in the franchise. This one, I think they spend about a minute on Child's Play 3, put it that way. But yeah, it's not bad. It's quite enjoyable. Next up we have Christine, definitely one of the best Stephen King adaptations and one of John Carpenter's best films, about this guy who's a bit of a loser. He gets this car and he starts to get a little bit more confidence within himself, but he becomes a bit of an unlikable person, and the car starts to gleam a bit more red and stuff. It's kind of like the car is taking over him. But I really enjoy this one. Great score from John Carpenter in this. Next up we have Chronicle, another found footage movie. This is like these guys who are superheroes, but it's all done on found footage. However, their powers kind of overtake them and they start to do some really bad things. It's quite good actually. Michael B. Jordan there, I think it's Michael B. Jordan. Next up we have City of the Living Dead, a very boring movie. I just could not get into this one. And this is the Arrow version with them old window covers, which I really like actually. I wish they kind of carried on doing that. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of this, I gotta be honest. I just remember this priest going all the time. Yeah, wasn't for me. Next up we have Climax from Gaspar Noé, which is definitely one of the most interesting movies in this collection. These people who are all at a party and the punch gets spiked and they all start to go a little bit strange and weird. And bad things start to happen, but there's an opening to this movie that is fantastic. This really well choreographed dance scene. I absolutely loved it. But yeah, great movie. Next up we have Cloverfield, which, if you remember, I showed you 10 Cloverfield Lane before. This is actually the first one, and I haven't put them together because it doesn't feel like they are very much linked. It's a weird double feature, really. But it's basically about this giant monster attacking New York, and it's all done on found footage, so that was interesting. It's not bad. Not a bad movie. Next up we have Clown, which I actually quite enjoyed. This clown can't turn up to this kid's birthday party, so his dad finds this old clown suit. I think it's in the attic. He puts it on and becomes the clown for this kid's party, but he can't actually get it off. And the longer time goes on, this clown starts to sort of take over him. It's a really, really cool flick. I do recommend this one. Next up, we have The Collector, a home invasion movie that is sort of turned on its head. This burglar, he goes into this home and this other person has got there before him, and he sets all these deadly traps around. It's a cool little flick. I didn't love it as much as a lot of other people, but it's still quite good. Lots of gore in there. Next up, we have The Conjuring, really well done movie by James Wan. It's jump scares done right, this one, but there's a really cool story attached to it as well. Definitely one of the best movies in the Conjuring universe. And then we have The Conjuring 2, which is probably my favourite one in the entire universe because I related to this one a little bit more. This is all done in Britain, in the Enfield house. And I don't think it was as scary as the first one, but the story was definitely more better. And I will take story over jump scares any day of the week. Really, really enjoyed this one. But yeah, I love the story to this. I really did. I love the whole look of it and the 70s feel. Next up, we have The Conjuring. The Devil Made Me Do It on 4K. Definitely the worst movie in the entire Conjuring universe for me, even worse than The Nun and The Curse of La Llorona. I hated this movie, to be honest. I don't like the way Vera Farmiga can go and touch something in a crime scene and then see the whole crime scene. That is just like a superhero. Stop it. Next up, we have The Craft, one of my most watched movies of all time. These 4 schoolgirls who, they're like a little coven of witches in their high school, and they all have their own little stories going on, which I appreciate. But it's just a really fun high school movie. And the deeper they go into this witchcraft and stuff, the darker the movie becomes. Next up, we have The Crazies from George A. Romero. I wasn't a big fan of this one. Just did nothing for me. Did not enjoy this movie at all. I know that is... people will be shouting at the screen now, but it just wasn't for me. I definitely much preferred The Crazies, the remake, with Timothy Olyphant. Some really cool moments at a baseball ground as well. But yeah, definitely preferred this one a hell of a lot more. A remake that is better than the original, in my opinion. Next up, we have Creepshow. I've only seen this once, but I quite enjoyed it. The story with Leslie Nielsen is definitely the best story out of this 5-movie anthology. But yeah, it's a fun flick. Just 5 little easy horror movie stories to go at. And next up, we have Creepshow 2, which I think is probably better in my opinion. I know people will not say that, but I love the first 2 stories in this movie. The first one where this Indian statue is protecting this store, and the second one, which is all done on this raft, and this big slime blob is coming towards them. They can't get off the raft. I loved that second story. Hitchhiker one, it's not great, but it's watchable. Next up, we have The Crow. I've seen this twice now, and I think it's okay, but it's not a movie I love as much as a lot of other people. I'm going to give it another go when The Crow remake comes out, just to see if I like it a little bit better. It was alright. I think it's got a weird visual style to it, put it that way. But Brandon Lee is excellent in this movie, and it's real shame what happened to him, because he could have went on, you know, to be a massive star, and that is just a strange thing that happened on that set, man. But I'm gonna have to give this another go. It's been a long time since I watched this. Next up is The Curse of La Llorona, one of the weakest movies in the Conjuring universe, but it's still not bad. It's still watchable. I just think that it felt a little bit too generic for me, put it that way. But a real dark opening scenes in this one, and the demon of La Llorona is one of the more interesting ones in the Conjuring universe. I just wish they could have done a little bit more with it. Next up, we have Hideo Nakata's Dark Water. This is about a woman and her daughter who move into this apartment block, and this water is seeping through the ceiling, and there's something sinister going on in the apartment. It wasn't bad, actually. I quite enjoyed this one. Next up, we have Dave Made a Maze, which is a little bit more of an indie comedy movie, but it's about this guy who makes a maze and he can't get out. And people go into the maze to try and get him out, and it's just this gigantic maze, basically, that is made out of cardboard and stuff. Real cool visual look to it, and it gets a little bit darker as the movie goes on. But it's not bad. I quite enjoyed this. Next up, we do have a movie that I do like from George A. Romero, and that is Dawn of the Dead. Definitely definitely the best horror zombie movie ever made, in my opinion. With one of my favourite horror movie locations in the shopping mall. Absolutely love this film. I've seen it so many times. The first time I watched it, my nan babysat me and my sister, brought this over with some goodies and stuff, and we watched it, and it was just such a fun time. So yeah, that and Zombie Fleshies that she used to bring. Rest in peace to the guy. I'm really sorry. He's just, a name has eluded me. But the guy who played Flyboy, sadly lost him a few days ago at the time of this recording, but fantastic movie with great characters. Next up, we have Day of the Dead, which is another great movie in the Living Dead trilogy. This one all takes place in this underground bunker, and there is a villain in this, played by Joseph Pilato, Captain Rhodes, who is worse than the zombies, put it that way. But they're doing like little experiments on the zombies and stuff. It's an interesting film. I quite enjoyed this one as well. It's not as good as Dawn, but it's one of the best. It's still one of the best horror zombie movies I've ever seen, I think. Next up, we have James Wan's Dead Silence, about a ventriloquist dummy that is causing all sorts of havoc. I didn't love this one, unfortunately. It had a really great opening, but as the movie went on, I was just losing interest, and there's a bit of CGI. Why would you throw CGI on a ventriloquist dummy? I do not know. So I wasn't really that mad on this one, to be honest. Next up, we have Dead and Buried, which was sent to me very kindly by a subscriber on my other channel called Phil. So thanks so much for that. Yeah, quite enjoyed this one. This is about a bunch of people in this town, and every time one of them is killed, they join this cult that goes around killing all other people in the town. Yeah, pretty decent movie, this. Next up, we have Dead Snow, which is a Nazi zombie movie. The zombie army basically come and try and kill some people. I don't know if this is like a Norwegian film or something. I think I remember it having subtitles. It was quite fun. There's a Dead Snow 2, which I do not own, but I wouldn't mind checking it out. Deep Blue Sea, the first shark movie to come up in this video. I used to love this as a kid, and I watched it not long ago with my wife, and it wasn't as good as I remember. It was still a little bit of a fun time, but I just remember it being way better. It's basically they're all in this laboratory in the middle of the ocean, and these super sharks are basically breaking into it and trying to kill them all. Next up, they have The Deeper You Dig, which is about this guy who runs this young girl over, and he buries her because he's drunk, so he can't really exactly go to the police. And her mother is looking everywhere for her, and she's knocking at his door and stuff, saying, "Have you seen it?" It's just a little bit awkward. Now, this movie could have been way better if it just kept it a little bit more simple, but it tries to be a little bit too art housey at times, and kind of just stopped working for me. But it's a watchable film. It's not bad. Next up, we have a great Dario Argento movie that I have seen, and that is Deep Red. Absolutely enjoyed the hell out of this film. Didn't guess the whole mystery of it behind it. Some really well done shots. I love the use of blood that Dario Argento uses in his movies and stuff. I really enjoy this. One of the best giallo movies I've seen. Next up, we have Deliverance. I wasn't a big fan of this one either, to be honest. I did so many stories about this going into it and stuff. I just probably prefer movies like Wrong Turn and stuff, but it's alright. It's about a bunch of inbreds hunting these people down in the woods. Next up, we have Demonic Toys. Honestly, this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I bought it because of the cover art, and I like movies where toys kind of come to life and kill people, but it just wasn't for me. I just did not enjoy this movie. I don't really get rid of my Blu-rays because I always feel like sometimes can you watch it again and have a second light on it. I just don't like getting rid of my Blu-rays. I just don't. It's just me, preferably. Yeah, I just wasn't a big fan of this. Next up, we have The Range with the guy off Home Alone, the Man Marley character. He plays this guy in this movie who loses his mother, and his mother's his only friend, but he's not mentally all there, and he keeps her body in the house and stuff, and kills a few people. It's okay, it's not bad. Bit of a comedy aspect to that. Next up, we have Devil with a bunch of characters stuck in a lift, and one of these characters is actually the devil, and every time the lights go off in the lift, someone dies. Really, really cool concept that takes place mostly in the one location. I really enjoyed this film. Next up, we have The Devil's Rejects. Now, unbelievably, I've got a House of a Thousand Corpses t-shirt on, and I do not own that in the collection because it's never really been on Region B from my memory. But I am planning on getting a Region A player soon because it's just been too long now, and I'm sick of waiting for the titles to be released. And I'll definitely buy that on Blu-ray. But I've got The Devil's Rejects, which is the second one in the Firefly trilogy. And it's a really brutal road movie that I really quite enjoyed. And then we do have Three from Hell, which is another road movie, really, involving the same couple of characters and a new character that comes along, Otis's brother in this. And Not as good as The Devil's Reject or House of a Thousand Corpses. The first hour is really good, but when they get to Mexico, it goes a little bit silly for me. Brutal movie though. Next up we have Doctor Sleep, the sequel to The Shining, which takes place like 40 years later. I thought this was quite good. There's a little bit of CGI in there. Look, CGI just takes me out of horror movies so much. It's just the type of person I am. I quite enjoyed it. I definitely do a rewatch. I've only seen it once at the cinema. Rebecca Ferguson plays Rose the Hat in this movie. Is fantastic. She is such a great villain. There's a really upsetting scene involving a young child in this movie. Ewan McGregor did great as Danny as well, who's helping people with his shining ability. And it's good to see them go back to the hotel at the end of the film. So it's not bad. I definitely want to give it another go because I know people love that film. Next up, we do have Dog Soldiers. I was told to watch this for the longest time by everyone. So I picked up this second sight 4K edition of it. I didn't love it, to be honest. I thought it was okay. Didn't really do too much for me. There was a lot of football references in this film. At the end, when he's about to kill one of the werewolves, he goes, "They think it's all over." It is now. But there's some good characters in here and stuff. The main guy, I haven't seen him in anything else, but he was definitely the biggest positive about this film. But I didn't love it. It was okay. It was okay. Next up, we have Don't Breathe, about these bunch of thieves who break into this old guy's house, and the old guy might have a little bit of a dark side to him, and he sort of starts hunting them down. Really, really cool movie, this. I definitely recommend it. Just trying to think, is this Fede Alvarez who made this movie? I'm not quite sure. I can't remember. Oh, God. Yes, Fede Alvarez. So, yes, he done this and Evil Dead 2013, obviously, which I love, which I'll show you in a bit. But really looking forward to see what he can do with Alien. Next up, we have Don't Go Into the House. I believe this was a video nasty, if I remember correctly. This guy who brings these women home and basically burns them with a flamethrower, which is a really brutal death when you think about it. But you don't even have to think about it, do you? I quite enjoy this one. I was expecting this to just be a low-budget trash, which is kind of what it is, but it's definitely done well and keeps you engaged throughout. I quite enjoyed this, I'm not going to lie. Next up, we have Don't Look Now. I've only seen this film once, and I know a lot of people consider it to be one of the greatest horror movies ever made, but I was just bored to tears watching this movie. Now, as time has gone on, I have grown to appreciate slower-built horror movies, so maybe if I rewatch this, it might be a little bit better, but I just remember just being bored to tears with it. Controversial pick, I know. Next up, we have Don't Torture a Duckling, which is about a bunch of murders going on in this small Italian village. I quite enjoyed this one, to be honest. Thought it was okay. Next up, we have Dracula, Christopher Lee. Remember his name this time. Yeah, I watched this because I was going on a guy called Alan Scouser's live stream, and I know this is one of his favourite movies. And I'd never got around to these Christopher Lee Dracula films. I know they'd always been on popular horror art posters and stuff, but I just never got around to it. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go so I can discuss it with Alan. And I quite enjoyed it. I wish Christopher Lee was in it a little bit more. And I know there's a lot more Dracula movies with him in, but I've only ever seen this one. So yeah, Hammer's just not really my strong point when it comes to horror. And next up, we do have Drag Me to Hell from Sam Raimi. About this gypsy woman who puts a curse on this young woman, and because she won't let her off with her payments, and her life just starts to become a downward spiral into hell, basically, as the title suggests. That is Drag Me to Hell. Okay, guys, so you may notice the surroundings behind me may have changed a little bit. I don't know if the lighting's any different, but this is because I had a little bit of a break after the first hour or so of this video, so I'm just going to crack on with it now with the next bunch of titles, and I've just been getting these off the shelves. That's why the shelves are a little bit different behind me. So let's just get into it. And again, I will try and avoid the glare as much as possible, guys. But first up, we have Eaten Alive, a Tobe Hooper movie from 1976, is it? I've actually reviewed this on the channel. Very, very gritty movie, very, very grindhousey. Quite a few rapey scenes in there, which I didn't care too much for. But this had a good concept. It wasn't executed brilliantly, in my opinion, but the fact that this guy feeds people crocodiles is enough to make me want to watch this movie. But from the movies I've seen, the Toby Hooper, I haven't loved them all, apart from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in all honesty. But not great, but watchable. Next up, we have Eden Lake, which has one of the most dismal endings of any horror movie you'll ever see. Great British movie. This came out in the time when the hoodies were headline news here in Britain. I always remember seeing them getting blamed for everything, and this movie showcases a bunch of hoodies terrorizing this couple who go on holiday in like this remote countryside woods type of location. It's a really, really great film. Jack O'Connell in there, Thomas Turgoose. Edge of the Axe, little low-budget B-movie slasher from Arrow Video. I quite enjoyed this one. I think it was kind of funny when this guy was showing off with this girl, showing how a message is sent from one computer to the other, and now we just do that in the click of a button, don't we? But he had these two computers set up. I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, fun little slasher, not bad. Edward Scissorhands, could you consider this a horror? I just threw it in there anyway. Tim Burton gothic movie. I watched this for the first time a couple of years ago. It was alright, I think. Very, very strange film. It wasn't what I was expecting, but I quite enjoyed it. Johnny Depp was fantastic. Him and Winona Ryder were great together in this movie. But yeah, I didn't mind it. One of Tim Burton's better films for sure. Next up, we have Eraserhead. Now, this has got to be one of my least favourite David Lynch movies. I'm a big fan of David Lynch. I've loved nearly all the films from him I've seen, but I just couldn't get on board with this one. I have only seen it once, which was on a standard Blu-ray. I actually won this in a horror collection from Criterion that they were doing over on Twitter. I actually won about 5 or 6 Blu-rays from them. But this one, it just didn't work for me at all. I'm going to rewatch it though at some point, and maybe it'll click, because a lot of people seem to love this movie. I'm just making sure I can show the cover there, guys. Yeah, it should be alright. Erotic Ghost Story. I haven't seen this one yet. I picked it up really cheap from CEX, like a tenner. And I checked online, and this one should have been way more, because it's a nice big thick box set from 88 Films, but just haven't checked this one out yet, I'm afraid. Escape Room, really fun movie. It's like a Saw light film. These characters have to escape rooms, obviously. Like you know, them escape rooms you can go try and get out of, in the city centres and stuff. They're like tourist attractions. It's like one of them, but a deadly one. Really, really good concept. I quite enjoyed this film, to be honest. And then we have Escape Room 2 Tournament of Champions. On par with the first movie for enjoyment factor, but the setup for this film is ridiculous. Like, it's so coincidental how these characters meet at the start of the movie, but you've got to look past that and just try and have fun with it. But it's a decent sequel. I quite enjoyed it. I would be up for an Escape Room 3, definitely. Event Horizon on 4K. I watched this on VHS back in the day, and I just couldn't really get into it. But all I really remembered was Sam Neill going a bit crazy in this film, and I actually rewatched this again for the first time since the VHS a couple of months ago, and I thought it was a lot better, but it was still just an okay movie for me. I don't think this is one of the forgotten gems from the 90s or anything like that. It's a good movie. It's kind of like Alien, but does its own twist with a supernatural element. And the end, you could tell they really wanted to go for the gore rating, but it was cut to suit the BBFC or whatever. But I hear they have a more shocking version of this movie out there, and you can tell that what they wanted to do with the editing and stuff. But the best part about this is Sam Neill going a bit crazy. So yeah, it's not bad. It's okay. I just don't. It doesn't gel with me like a lot of other people. Next up, we have a little franchise coming now, and I have ranked all of this franchise on this channel, and that is The Evil Dead. This is my least favourite of the franchise, but I still quite enjoy it. I just think it didn't quite know what it was doing until it got to The Evil Dead 2. Now, Sam Raimi, I've got to applaud him for the direction he gets here. He squeezes every little bit of juice out of that lemon he's got there, because this is on such a low budget. And, he done what he could with this movie, and the directional choices that he makes, even just simple things like the overhead shots of the car and the filming of the cabin, making it so remote with the fog going around and stuff. He nailed it. I mean, he had to work with buttons here, but he nailed with what he had to work with. But yeah, this film terrified me when I first watched it on DVD back in the day, but it's okay. It does have a few problems, like especially in the latter half of the movie when characters are just screaming all the time, like the demons and stuff. Kind of grates on me after a while, but Ash isn't really the character he's known and loved until the second movie either, because he's just kind of a normal character in this one. But it's still a good movie. I still enjoy it. Next up, we have The Evil Dead 2, my second favourite in the franchise. So it feels like Sam Raimi definitely got what he could with the budget. Definitely had the budget to do what he could with this movie, what he wanted to do, should I say. And this is a much better sequel, in my opinion. It just goes for it from the off. I can't quite work out if he wanted. I think he's trying to remake the first movie, because it kind of does a very similar thing and doesn't acknowledge the first movie too much, if you like. But yeah, I had a really fun time with this. I love Henrietta, who lives in the basement and stuff like that. Really fun practical effects and stuff. And Ash is great in this movie. So yeah, it's a solid sequel. Next up, we have Army of Darkness. Pretty fun movie. Ash just is put in a different time period at the end. This one definitely goes for the more comedic aspect instead of the full-on horror, but it's a really fun time. I love the opening of the movie. It kind of reminds me of Return of the Jedi, with it in the pit and stuff. Next up, we have my favourite in the entire franchise, and that is the Evil Dead 2013 remake from Fede Alvarez. I like how he uses the final girl in this movie, but she's not all perfect. She's got her own problems. She's kind of like a drug user who's trying to go cold turkey, and she's starting to see these things in the woods, and the friends are kind of like, oh, it's just because she's going cold turkey and stuff. So he uses that storyline well for the location of the cabin with the demonites running around and stuff. Kind of intertwines very well there. Really great gore. You know, it's raining blood at one point in this movie. Yeah, I love this film. I think it's one of the best remakes ever made. Next up, we have Evil Dead Rise on 4K. I haven't checked the 4K out yet, but I did go to the cinema to watch this, and I had a great time with it. I love the location change to the skyscraper, even though it does feel very much like an Evil Dead movie. We are enclosed to one apartment for most of the film, and the demonites are trying to get in and terrorize this family. We have some really good directional choices in this one as well. I like the little spyglass moment where this kid's looking out of a peephole in the door, and there's blood around the door hole and stuff. The peephole, and stuff is going on behind there, like creepy ass stuff. But yeah, a lot of people moaned about the characters in this one, but I actually did care about all the characters in this movie. I had a great time with this one at the cinema. Really looking forward to rewatching that on 4K at some point. Next up, we have The Exorcism of Emily Rose, a first time watch for me in 2023. This is basically about a priest who is put on trial, and he is accused of, I can't remember if it's murder or manslaughter now, but he tried to do an exorcism on this girl, and the court are arguing that she was very sick and she needed help, but he didn't go and get that help. And it flashes back and forth between the court case and the time that Emily Rose was possessed. And there's some really great moments in this, especially when the court case is starting to get a little bit haunted as well. Like, things are happening around the court case. I liked all that. But you really do get behind this priest. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a good concept. Something different with the exorcism, the demonic possession genre. Next up, we have The Exorcist. Now, this is a film that has slightly grown on me over the years, but I didn't love it the first time I watched it. I didn't see what the big fuss was about and stuff. But I actually reviewed this on the channel not long ago, coming up to The Exorcist Believer. And you know what? I seen how great this movie was then. I seen the genius of it. I can see why it creeped a lot of people out back in the day, especially when Reagan is starting to basically murder people. Like, that priest, I love that storyline where we don't know if he's fell down the stairs drunk or if Reagan actually made him fall down the stairs, and all the way that comes to fruition with their head turning around and taking that the drunk guy's voice and stuff, just proving that it was her who killed him. That creeped me out more than anything this time. But I definitely think you've got to watch the director's cut with the spider walk going down the stairs. That's one of the best moments in the entire film. And the reason he took that out, I learned not long ago, is that there was too many strings and stuff that you could see, and it was very hard for them to digitally remove that. But when technology came along later, we were able to remove it. So it's definitely the best version to watch. He hasn't cut it because he felt like it shouldn't be there. It just because it didn't look great. But I'm glad we finally have that sorted now. Really, really great film. One of the best horror movies ever made, in my opinion. And next up, we have The Exorcist 3. I'd seen snippets of this over the years, but I finally sit down and fully watched it just last year. I had a great time with it. I think it's a good concept, the way it's like a slightly moving on from The Exorcist with two characters who weren't the biggest characters in The Exorcist film, and using them to create this new storyline. It's like a detective crime thriller, if you like, with one of the best jump scares ever put to film. So yeah, The Exorcist 3 is the best sequel in the entire Exorcist franchise. Next up, we do have a gem from the 90s, and that is The Faculty, directed by Robert Rodriguez. Stellar cast here. You know, you got Josh Hartnett, Jordana Brewster, Usher's in there. Elijah Wood, of course, is one of the main characters in this film. And this is about a bunch of aliens taking over the high school. Absolutely love this film. It's fantastic. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. Next up, we have Fertile Ground. This is one of the very first Blu-rays I bought. And this is from After Dark, who've done really cheap horror movies. And as I was collecting at the time, I was picking anything up. I don't do that anymore. I just try to pick up things I'm interested in or things I've seen that I want to add to the collection. But this wasn't a really good film at all. I can't even remember too much about it, to be honest. But it's a very low budget, boring movie, to be honest. So, yeah, not great. I'm one of them people, though, I just can't seem to... I don't really want to get rid of my Blu-rays, because sometimes you might rewatch that film on chance, or just decide to rewatch it and then grow a better love for it. And with Blu-rays becoming harder and harder to come by, like so many of them go out of print, I'd rather own them, you know. When you see this video next year, I'll be in a different location. I'm getting all my loft converted and stuff like that, so that'll be my new movie room, and I'll have plenty of space anyway. So you never know, maybe one day we watch Fertile Ground, who knows. But yeah, next up we have the Final Destination 5 film collection. Got this for really cheap from Amazon Germany, was it, or was it Rare Waves? I can't quite remember. But yeah, I love the first three films. The first movie is a movie that has terrified me more than anything. Psychologically, I think about this movie every time I get on a damn plane. It's messed with my head so much. The best opening scene to a horror movie ever, in my opinion. But the other opening scenes in 2 and 3 are pretty good. I still have not checked out 4 and 5 yet. I know that is sacrilege, but I just haven't got there yet. I'm looking. I was gonna watch these with my wife, but the new one is meant to be coming out maybe this year or early next year. So maybe we'll binge them just before that. I don't know. I'm kind of saving it, but these are just really, really fun films from the ones I've seen. So yeah, really looking forward to the new one. Next up, we have Firestarter, Stephen King adaptation. I thought this movie was really great. Drew Barrymore in a much younger role. He's got these powers to set things on fire and stuff. And she's kind of on the run from this government who want to capture her. Really, really fun film. I enjoyed this one a hell of a lot. Flowers in the Attic. Is this a horror? I can't quite... I don't think so, no. But I threw it in there. It sounds like a horror movie, doesn't it? Maybe I shouldn't have, but oh well. About a bunch of kids who are kind of locked away in this house and never seen the daylight and stuff, and their aunt kind of keeps them shielded from the world. Very interesting film, although the chemistry with the brother and sister was a little bit too much for my liking. It's kind of some weird incest going on there, or it seems like there is when you're watching the film. Next up, we have The Fly from I was about to say Brandon Cronenberg then. David Cronenberg, of course. Brandon Cronenberg is his son, who's killing it now with a couple of movies. One I'll talk about in a minute. But The Fly, Jeff Goldblum getting stuck in a transportation device with a fly and starts to slowly turn into a fly himself. Really upsetting film, but a really, really tense and gripping movie. Really good film there. Next up, we have The Fog from John Carpenter. I've got to be honest, guys, this film has just never clicked with me. Seen it twice now, but it was a long time ago. I just thought it was like a 3 out of 3 star average movie. I'm probably gonna have to rewatch it at some point. I'm not the biggest John Carpenter fan compared to a lot of people. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I do love a few of his films, but I do think some of them are slightly overrated. And I know some people may be turning the video off now and stuff, but he's a good director. I just don't think he's one of the greatest of all time, in my opinion. But yeah, The Fog, it's okay. Probably definitely gonna have to rewatch that. Frailty, one of my most underrated movies of all time. One of my favorite horror movies of all time, even though it's got more of a thriller aspect to it. This is a really great movie, guys. You've got to check this out if you haven't seen it. Got a young Matthew McConaughey in there. It's directed by Bill Paxton and stars Bill Paxton. And he has a vision at work. Like, this angel visits him and says, you've got to go out and there and kill these demons in the name of God. God has asked you and chose you to kill these demons, but they're disguised as humans. He goes home, tells his 2 sons that they've got to do God's work. And one of the sons thinks he's absolutely crazy, and the other son is on board and wants to do it. And you kind of don't know who is right, who is wrong. And as a viewer, you're kind of playing along with that. Really, really interesting film with a fantastic twist. Highly recommend Frailty. Freddy vs. Jason. I'm not a big fan of this film. I loved the Elm Street franchise. But for me, I just don't really like the characters in this movie too much. The CGI is awful. There's a giant snake in this movie at one point, and it looked better in the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors because they use practical effects. It does have its moments. There's some fun scenes in this movie, but I just remember watching this last time and just not really vibing with it too much. It's a good idea, but next up we have Friday the 13th, the remake. Now, I've got to be honest, guys, I do not own any other Friday the 13th movies in this collection. I do not own a all-region player, but that is one thing I am desperate to buy very, very shortly. I'm actually looking at them now and weighing up which one's the best, because I want to get a 4K region 3 player that will play region 3 Blu-rays as well. So I might as well kill 2 birds with one stone, get the 4K player with one that plays region 3 Blu-rays. I do have a 4K player, but you might as well get the best of both in one device as well, mightn't you? And I do want to pick up that Friday the 13th box set from Scream Factory. So that's why I've kind of been holding back on adding to the collection, because the only set you can get here in the UK, from my knowledge, is the first 8 movies, but it doesn't include 9 and Jason X. So I'd rather just go get a region 3 player and buy that set. So hopefully that will be in the next collection update next year. But yeah, Friday the 13th, the remake, I think this is a pretty damn good remake. My only problem with it was Jason taking people hostage and stuff. That just didn't really sit right with me, but there's some really great moments in this. I love the opening 10 minutes where it just throws like the first 4 movies from the original franchise, puts them all together and throws them into this movie, and that's like your opening. Really great Jason in this. I can't remember the guy's name who plays him. Oh, it's escaping me now. It's escaping me. I'm sorry. I'll probably remember after this video. But yeah, I think this is a really solid remake. I have only seen it once, but I really did enjoy it. Next up, we have Fright Night, a film I've seen quite a few times now, but yeah, I do like this movie. I wasn't there back in the day. I watched this quite late in life. Not late in life, but I only caught it for the last 10 years. Was the first time I watched it about 10 years ago, and I've seen it a couple of times since then as well. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. I love Chris Sarandon as the the mysterious vampire who lives next door, and Charlie, who no one believes that this vampire is living next door, and you're on board with him, but no one else believes him, so you get on his side. And yeah, there's just he teams up with these this guy who's on a vampire show, and he's like so knowledgeable about killing vampires and stuff like that. And then when they go and try and kill the vampires, he's a bit of a coward. So yeah, it's a really fun film. Third act does go a little bit too much for me. It's kind of like this vampire turned into a werewolf type deal. It's kind of a bit of both. I was like, what's going on here? But it's a fun film. I quite enjoy Fright Night. Probably going to have to give that another go. It's been a while. Fright Night the remake, I actually watched this for the first time a couple of years ago. I think this is a pretty solid remake, to be honest. Colin Farrell is great as the main vampire in this, and Anton Yelchin, who sadly is not with us no more, putting in a great performance as the protagonist. And you got the woman off Hereditary in there too, who puts a really good performance in. God, damn, I can't remember her name. It'll come to me when I speak about Hereditary, probably. But yeah, she was great in this as well. Next up, we have From Dusk Till Dawn, which is one of the best vampire movies ever made. Quentin Tarantino feels like it's his movie for the first half, and it feels like it's Robert Rodriguez's for the second half. Even though Robert Rodriguez mainly is credited for director. George Clooney in his best performance, in my opinion. Tarantino is an absolute weirdo in this film. But yeah, the flip in the middle of the movie is great. And I don't know which half of the movie I prefer, but I love all the little one-liners in the second half. You know, whatever you say to them, say to me first. Next up, we have Tobe Hooper's The Funhouse. I recently watched this not long ago, and I was really disappointed. It's my least favourite Tobe Hooper movie. I definitely prefer Eaten Alive over this, and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Just didn't vibe with this film at all. It just felt like there was no story. It was a bunch of characters decide to stay in this funhouse, and there's some weirdo carnies living there, and a few of them get picked off. It was just done in it wasn't executed very well. I didn't like the villains, the characters, or anything. There was nowhere was enjoyable in this movie, put it that way, and the mask that the killer's running around in is so silly. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of The Funhouse, to be honest. Galaxy of Terror, I mainly bought this because of the artwork. I know it was a bit of a blind buy, but man, look at that. You got great artwork there, great artwork there. I think this one's my favourite. And this doesn't really have much to do with the movie. I can't remember anything like that in this film. But we've got Robert Englund in there, Sid Haig. Robert Englund was another draw for this movie. Unfortunately, it's not a great film. It's a bit of a mess and kind of all over the place. It does take a little bit of inspiration from Alien, but this feels like a very TV movie that just did not much for me at all, to be honest. The best thing about this is the cover art. Next up, we have The Gate. Not a film I really liked all that much. I know a lot of people love this movie, but for me, it just wasn't all that good. About these little monsters, I believe, coming out this hole in the garden that these two kids dig. It's a very, very 80s movie, but I just couldn't get on with that movie that much. Next up is Get Out. Now, I gotta be honest, guys. I like this film, but I do think it's a very, very overrated movie. I seen what was coming 30 minutes in. I knew what the twist was going to be. And it just reminded me of Hostel without the gore, if that makes sense. And yeah, it was like Hostel, but with slavery instead of bidding on people to kill. It was a good movie. It's a 7 out of 10 film. I don't think it's one of the best horror movies ever made or anything like that. I much prefer Us over this from Jordan Peele, but it's still a good film. I still enjoyed it. I think because I seen what was coming and I never really guessed twists in movies, that kind of dampened the experience for me. Right, a bit of a family-friendly horror franchise coming up now, and that is Ghostbusters, one of the greatest films ever made, let's be honest. I love the chemistry between all of the Ghostbusters in this movie. Peter Venkman, I love the way he's just strolling through this film, but it's a masterclass in acting as well at the same time. You've all seen Ghostbusters, guys. I don't need to talk too much about this one, do I? And we have Ghostbusters 2 on 4K, the very first 4K I ever owned. This is because at the time you couldn't get Ghostbusters 1 and 2 in a double pack. Or you could get it in a double pack, sorry, but I already own Ghostbusters, but you could not buy Ghostbusters 2 on Blu-ray. And then they brought it out on 4K, so my girlfriend knew I wanted it, my wife, sorry, and she just bought me it for my birthday. So yeah, I like this sequel. I've heard this sequel get a lot of flack, that it just does the exact same thing as the first film and stuff, but no, I've always enjoyed Ghostbusters 2, and I think it's got a little bit more of a horror element in it with Vigo and the River of Slime and stuff. Ghostbusters Afterlife, yeah, a really great return to the franchise. Looking forward to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire coming this year. But yeah, I liked all the new Ghostbusters and stuff in this movie, and I liked the whole countryside setting. Ghostbusters, the female-led movie. Do you know what? If I went to Pit Cinema to see this at the time, I would have been so pissed off. But I watched it on Blu-ray many years later, and I actually had a fun time with it. I think this is quite a funny film. Kristen Wiig is someone, it just makes me laugh. I love watching her in movies. So yeah, I love Chris Hemsworth as well in this movie, who is just the worst secretary in the world. Like, the phone's ringing and he doesn't even answer it. It's literally like his main job. Ghost of Mars from John Carpenter. I remember really liking this back in the day, but I haven't rewatched this since I bought it on Blu-ray a few months ago now. But it's got a solid cast in there. Ice Cube, Natasha Henstridge, who you'll remember from Species, lads. Jason Statham's in there as well. So yeah, I remember enjoying it, but I remember it being one of them movies that's so bad it's good. But I have to give it another go. It's been a while. Ghost Stories had a lot of great things about this one. I didn't like this one too much, I'm not going to lie. It's an anthology story, three stories about this guy who doesn't believe in horror, supernatural and stuff, and then he goes and visits three people who tells him these stories and how true these ghost stories are. And it's got a good cast, but it wasn't for me. I found it kind of dull, to be honest. Next up is Ghoulies, which is gifted to me by my friend Carl, so thanks so much, Carl. Yeah, very, very low budget movie. It was alright. It was alright. I haven't seen Ghoulies 2, or is there like 4 of them now? Next up is The Gift, which is more of a thriller movie where this guy he knocks at this house and goes, "Oh, aren't you my friend from school?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I remember you in my school." And he sends him a gift, and he's trying to force his way into his life, but he ends up telling his wife, "Look, I hardly even knew the guy at school, but I don't know why he's being so over friendly with me and stuff." And it's a little bit of an awkward watch at times, but yeah, Joel Edgerton's a real creep in this. It's not bad. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. I've heard great things about this film. I just haven't watched it yet, but I picked it up because of the praise that it was getting. So hopefully I'll get to it at some point this year. The Girl on the Third Floor. Yeah, very, very forgettable film. This guy moves in and he's doing a bit of building work, and there's something in the house. It just, yeah, it wasn't great. Goosebumps, another family-friendly movie. I had a fun time with this. Goosebumps is a series of books I used to watch all the time, read all the time as a kid. And I recently watched the new series on Disney Plus. Had a fun time with that. Yeah, but this is a great film, combining a lot of the books into one story. And Jack Black as R.L. Stein is a really fun character. And then we have Goosebumps 2, Haunted House. Not as good as the first movie. It does feel like a full-on cash grab, this. I've got to be honest. And Jack Black makes an appearance for about 5 minutes towards the end, if that. But it's still a fun time. The Greasy Strangler, one of them movies that is so bad it's good, but even though it is setting out to be a bad movie, it's a very self-aware film. But you honestly, guys, you've never seen anything like this if you haven't seen The Greasy Strangler. Such a fun, dark, smelly movie. Like, the characters in this are just so vile. Especially this guy. But yeah, I definitely recommend giving this a go. It's so fun, and it's got a fantastic score. Oh my god, I listen to it sometimes on YouTube and it just makes me laugh. The Green Inferno, a first time watch for me last year. I put it in my top 10 first time watches of 2023. Really, really gory movie. Probably Eli Roth's goriest. It's definitely got his goriest kill scene. This is about a group of environmentalists who crash in the rainforest and unfortunately run into a bunch of cannibals who want them for dinner, and they lock them up in this cage and start killing them one by one. There's a lot of comedy thrown in there, typical Eli Roth comedy, but the horror sort of takes over the comedy. Like, you're laughing, next minute you're like, oh, holy shit, look at that. So yeah, it does do them both well, I think. I quite enjoyed this film, even though it's got one of the biggest arseholes ever as a character in that movie. Gremlins, really fun Christmas horror movie, really, isn't it? Just about a guy who picks this little fella up, and you can't feed them after midnight, of course. And what happens? I can't remember, he sprays water on him or he feeds them after midnight now, but all these gremlins start growing out of cute little gizmo there and start to wreak havoc in the town. Yeah, fun film. Gremlins, I'm sure you've all seen it. Next up, we have Gremlins 2, The New Batch, and I've got to be honest, guys, I prefer this one a little bit more over the first. I just love how wacky and crazy this movie is. It's such a fun time, just everything going off in this skyscraper. Just so many wacky characters like Christopher Lee and stuff, and he's the mad scientist. Yeah, I absolutely love this film. I just think it's so fun. I used to watch it all the time as a kid. And next up, we have The Gruesome Twosome. Very, very low budget film. It's only about 60 minutes long, and it's about this woman and a deranged son who kill women and use their scalps to sell in their wig shop. Yeah. And all she says, she's got like this stuffed cat, and all she ever says is she'll say something and then talk to the cat and go, "Right, Napoleon," because the cat is called Napoleon. Like, she must say, "Right, Napoleon," about 15 times in this short 60-minute movie. So, yeah, that is The Gruesome Twosome. Okay, guys, half a franchise coming up here now because, again, this is the region free player bullshit that the UK just has not released a big box set of this. But I am looking on getting the Scream Factory 4Ks at some point. So, yeah, I need to definitely upgrade this franchise. I have seen them all, but yeah, I only own a select few of them. Halloween, one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Gets better every single time I watch it. Absolutely love this movie. It's just so simple. John Carpenter's best film for me. Like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of Carpenter, but I absolutely adore this movie. It is near enough slasher perfection. Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie. Now, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, guys, but I absolutely love this film. I think it's one of the best Halloween movies. I think Rob Zombie took something and made it his own. He didn't give a fuck what anyone thought. This was his vision, and he went with it. It's a really gritty, dark, disturbing film, and Michael is just so menacing in this movie. Now, I watched the franchise. I binged it a couple of years ago, and there was so many films in this franchise just felt like they were doing the same thing. Halloween, Halloween 2, Halloween 4, Halloween 5, Halloween 2018. So when you're given something a little bit different, I appreciated it so much, and I absolutely loved this film. It's in top 3 Halloween movies. I've got Halloween, Halloween 2, and this Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie version. A lot of people disagree with me. I'm on an island with it. I don't even care that Loomis is an asshole in this because it's something different. Why do the same thing? And I really like the struggle Laurie Strode goes through because everyone hates her and stuff, but man, that performance is so underrated. From Scout Taylor Compton, you can really feel that the mental side and the trauma of the year before has really got to her. So yeah, fucking brilliant film in my opinion, and the first 25 minutes is just pure horror. That's some of the best horror directing I've ever seen. So in that first 25 minutes. Next up we have Halloween 2018, the David Gordon Green trilogy. I wasn't big fussed on this the first time I watched it, but when I rewatched it when I'd done the franchise a couple of years ago, it grew on me a hell of a lot, and I do think it is one of the best Halloween films. So yeah, grew to appreciate this one on rewatch. Halloween Kills, my least favourite of this franchise, mainly down to Tommy Doyle, who's played by Anthony Michael Hall in this movie, who just runs around saying evil dies tonight. And it's just a bunch of kills. Kill. Apart from two little 70s, 1970, the flashbacks that are meant to be from the 1970s. They totally work. And that guy who played Donald Pleasanton's character, Dr. Loomis, and that just looked like him. I couldn't believe it wasn't him. But Halloween Kills, my least favourite. But it's okay though, it's watchable. Halloween Ends, one of the most hated horror movies of all time. I wouldn't say I absolutely loved it, but I had a good time with this. I definitely preferred it over Halloween Kills. The opening really threw me off, and I was like, okay, got something a little bit more different here, something a little bit interesting. I love the whole Corey storyline. Now, I do get the problems of this film, of course. Maybe he should have been introduced into the second movie a little bit. I could see why people don't like it, okay? I get it. But I really liked it. It was a nice surprise for me, something totally different. Next up, we have Hannibal. Probably should have put this next to Silence of the Lambs in the collection, but oh well. I think this is a pretty solid sequel. It's a very long film, but it works. Gary Oldman, you can't believe that's him playing this rich guy with the deformed face in this film. Some really great moments, the brain eating scene and the scene where he pushes that guy out the window and hangs him and all his organs fall out. And Julianne Moore is one of my favourite actresses ever. I think she's done a pretty good job trying to step into the masterclass of Jodie Foster from the first movie, so I thought she pulled it off. I mean, she's not as good, but she does a job here. So yeah, it's a good sequel, one of the better horror sequels out there. Hannibal Rising, not the greatest. It's more of a prequel when Hannibal is kind of in the war, or living in wartime. It's a very forgetful film. I haven't seen this for a few years now, but I remember thinking it was just okay, but nothing more. Happy Birthday to Me. This is a recent pickup because Indicator had a massive sale on. I just haven't checked this one out yet, but I've heard it's quite good. Unfortunately, I haven't watched it, guys. Happy Death Day. This is like a Groundhog Day horror movie with a bit of comedy thrown in. This girl who's just being killed off every single day of her life and has to repeat the day, and she's got to find out who the killer is. So yeah, it's a really fun time, this one. The director of Freaky, and he was meant to be doing Scream 7, but he's off the project now, unfortunately. And Happy Death Day to You. This is definitely more of a comedy science fiction movie. The horror aspect isn't really there in this. It's definitely, if anything, it's a horror comedy with way too much comedy. But yeah, I had a fun time with this one. I like the character of Trish. What's her name? Tree. I like her character. Next up, we have The Haunting. Now, if I really do rewind time, I think I always say the first horror movies I ever watched were The Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, Child's Play 2, Friday the 13th. And they were, but I remember this being on telly when I was about 6 years old, and there was like a couple of scenes where I just had to run out the room. So that was when I think about it, that was my very, very first introduction to horror ever. When I think about it, but I didn't watch the whole film. I just seen little snippets on the TV. I remember my dad even being a bit freaked out by it. I watched this again when it came out on this premium collection, and I didn't see why I was scared of this movie. There's one little jump scare towards the end, but it uses sound a lot to be more effective. And I think back in the day when I watched this as a kid, that was what was scaring me. But yeah, it's a little bit of a dated movie, to be honest. It's still okay, though. Hell of the Living Dead on 4K. I watched this not long ago when the ET Films released this. I didn't love it, to be honest. There's some cool makeup and practical effects and stuff, but some good gore. The stock image part really took me out of the movie because it just did not work for me. Like these characters are looking at a bunch of animals and then they're using stock footage from like wildlife programs thrown in there. Just didn't work for me at all. I'd like to rewatch this at some point though, because there was moments where I enjoyed the movie, and I know there's a bit of controversy around this back in the day. I believe it might, I can't quite remember if it is If I Do Nasty now. I think it is. But yeah, I wasn't too fussed on it. Looked nice on 4K though. Hell Night, I thought I was going to really like this movie, and I just did not like it whatsoever. These students are forced to stay the night in a hotel, house or a hotel that's said to be haunted. It's got Linda Blair in there, but I just didn't enjoy this movie at all, guys. Good cover art though. There's a separate cover art in here, which is really nice too. So yeah, nice artwork from 101 Films there, but I always used to see this in the video shop and never ever rented it. And when it came to Blu-ray, I thought, okay, now is my chance to finally watch this. But I just wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. Hellraiser, the box set. I know there's a Quartet of Torment brought out by Arrow. I have been debating picking that up just for the Hellraiser Bloodline film. But we got 1, 2, and 3 here. So Hellraiser, yeah, great horror movie this. Really imaginative from Clive Barker. Andrea is really the main villain in this movie, along with Frank. Pinhead doesn't really show up until towards the end. but he's used on all the posters and stuff. But this is basically about this woman who's bringing men home and killing them so her deceased ex-lover can feed on them and become human again. So yeah, it's an interesting concept, really, to be honest. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. I used to think this was a better sequel than 3, but upon rewatch, it's a very, very messy film, in my opinion. But this character is a great Cenobite, the Doctor. Just takes Pinhead and his Cenobites out in like seconds in this movie, from what I remember. But it's a little bit too much with the labyrinth and stuff like that. So yeah, on rewatch, it has actually become a little bit of a worse movie. Hellraiser 3 Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth. I much prefer this sequel, to be honest, than Hellbound. A bit more of a slasher aspect to this. It's a bit silly when there's characters with CDs in their head throwing CDs at people and stuff, but I quite like this film. I enjoyed it, to be honest, but a lot more than 2. So yeah, Hellraiser 1 is the best out of this box set. So that is Hellraiser 1, 2 and 3. Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer on 4K. Not the best looking 4K in the world. Did it even need a 4K? I'm not sure. But this is the true story of a serial killer called Henry. I can't remember his second name now. What did it say in the back? I can't remember the guy's second name. But him and his brother-in-law, Otis, go on this killing spree and basically just kill a lot of people. But Otis is a much worse character for me. He's just a disgusting human being in this movie. There's some hard-hitting moments, especially one where they videotape a family being killed. That is the most hard-hitting moment of this film. But Michael Rooker is excellent as Henry in this. And we do have Hereditary. Now, I did say that woman's name from Fright Night, the remake, is going to come to me when I pick this movie up. And it isn't. I'm just going to have to look at the back. Toni Collette. She puts a wonderful performance in this film. Now, this, to me, is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. The last 10 years, it might just be the best horror movie ever made. Ari Aster, absolute brilliant debut from him. I just loved how this movie unraveled. I really did. The first 30 minutes, what happens to this young girl? Holy shit. It's kind of hard to get into without giving stuff away. You kind of just got to watch this movie and see it for what it is. If you haven't seen Hereditary, definitely give it a go. Next up, we have Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes. I wasn't a big fan of this movie, guys. I'm not going to lie. It's okay, but I definitely prefer one I'm about to pick up in a minute. Very, very old school, low budget. I just didn't like it as much as the remake, unfortunately. Now, I did watch the remake before the original, so that has probably had a massive hindrance on why I didn't like it as much, but I just think this is one of the best remakes ever made. I think this just is very well put together. There's some really gruesome, hard-hitting moments in this film, especially when these people who are living in the hills, these like inbred type characters, run towards this RV that the family are staying in, and it's some hard-hitting stuff in here. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. It's brutal as hell, and it's just a great remake. Hills of Eyes 2, not a bad little sequel to the remake. It does go a little bit silly in the third act, but yeah, it's not bad. I quite enjoyed this one. One of the greatest horror / thrillers ever made, in my opinion, and we are getting a big Second Sight box set this year, hopefully, and I'll still probably pick it up, even though I own this. I very rarely double dip, but it will be nice to have on 4K, and that is The Hitcher. This is the German steelbook, The Hitcher, the Highway Killer. Rutger Hauer, one of the best horror movie villains ever in John Ryder here. He is so mysterious. He commands every scene that he's in. It's just a wonderful performance, and this guy picks him up and his life changes. Like, Rutger Hauer will not leave this guy alone and terrorizes him everywhere he goes. Yeah, fantastic film. I absolutely love The Hitcher. I just want to watch it again now, just talking about it. It's brilliant. Hocus Pocus, one of the family-friendly horror movies. It's more of a comedy family-friendly film, to be honest, although they do kill a bunch of kids in this at the start. The The Sanderson sisters are so fun. It's a great Halloween movie to throw on. I'm sure you've all seen Hocus Pocus, but I used to rewatch this constantly as a kid with my sister. Absolutely love it. I can throw it on now and have fun with it. Hollow Man, a great film from Paul Verhoeven, who made my favorite movie of all time, not horror movie, in RoboCop. He's a great director, and this is another fun movie that he made. I think he just brings fun factor to his movies. So Kevin Bacon in there, who's kind of experimenting on this suit that will make him go invisible. But when he becomes invisible, it turns him into a very sinister person. He starts killing all these people off in the laboratory. Really, really fun film, that one. A Horrible Way to Die. I remember this just being a little bit of a low-budget indie film and not doing much for me at all. I just remember not liking it, but I can't remember too much about it. Host. Only a 60-minute movie, this was like a pandemic film. It came out in 2020. I think they made this film within 2 weeks. And it's all done on like a Skype call. And it's a pretty freaky found footage movie. I like it when movies do that, when it's on computers and stuff. It works for me. Mightn't work for everyone else, but it does for me. And yeah, there was only one character I didn't really like out of the 5 girls in this. She kind of grated on me a little bit. But overall, I quite enjoyed this. It was a decent movie and something a little bit different. Like, I think that might have been the first time I watched a movie that was done on a computer like that. Hostel from Eli Roth. Yeah, the more I watch this, the better it gets. I just think this is a really cool concept. Very, very realistic film. It feels like this could really happen. And it's about a bunch of guys who are just holidaying on vacation, and they go to Slovakia, and these people sort of trick them into going to this hostel where you can be bought and tortured and killed for a hefty fee in this hunting club. Yeah, really, really brutal movie, but I've seen way worse, of course, but it is a brutal film. But I love the story of this. The story is what makes this film for me. Hostel Part 2, a better sequel in my opinion, because I think just the way it dives into the lore of the world of this hunting club. We learn a bit more about it and stuff. That all just works for me, and I like the different perspectives. So we've got 3 girls who are holidaying in this one, but we also see these 2 guys who are bidding on these girls, and it goes back and forth between the antagonist and the protagonist and how it's all working out and how they're bidding on them and stuff. It's just so interesting. So yeah, one of the best horror sequels ever in my opinion, to be honest. I absolutely love Hostel 2. Hostel Part 3 is a straight-to-video movie, but you'll be mistaken for thinking this was going to be terrible, but it's actually a really fun film, to be honest. It takes the story of Hostel to Las Vegas, and people are like betting on what tools he's going to torture the person with next and stuff like that. It sounds ridiculous, but it actually works, to be honest. I quite enjoyed Hostel Part 3. There's a scene that's quite upsetting though, where he takes someone's face off. I felt really bad for the guy. Hounds of Love here. This is a really brutal film, an Australian movie, but I just have not got round to it yet, unfortunately. I think it's about a girl who's been kidnapped by a couple of demented people, but I just haven't seen it yet, unfortunately. Good little horror franchise coming up now. We got House, really fun comedy movie. I always wanted to rent this from the video shop because that finger was just on the doorbell, and I think that is the alternate artwork, if you can see it there. But yeah, I always wanted to rent it from the video shop, and I never did for some reason. I think my dad just kept saying it's not a really good film, you know, it's more of a comedy, and that kind of put me off. But yeah, quite a fun film. Gotta enjoy House. Then we have House 2, which is definitely my favourite in the entire franchise. Another movie that's so bad it's good. Man, me and my wife watched this and absolutely loved it. We had such a fun time with it. Some ridiculous characters in this movie. There's a dog that's half a caterpillar and stuff. And there's a dinosaur that they keep as a pet and has dinner with them at the dinner table. It's so 2 wacky characters at the centre. It's just so weird. And there's so much strange dialogue. You've got to watch this movie, man. It's incredible. I love it. House 3, also known as The Horror Show. I think it was meant to be called The Horror Show, and then they just put House 3 on there to see if it would sell a little bit better. But it doesn't really have anything to do with the other movies. Got Lance Henriksen in there, who's a cop who executes or he tracks down a serial killer who's executed, and he comes back through like the electricity and stuff and starts killing people. It's kind of like the movie Shocker. There's a lot of kills in this film, put it that way, but it's probably my least favourite in the entire House franchise, to be honest. And we do have House 4, The Repossession. I remember anchovy pizza in this that starts talking at one point. Pretty ridiculous film. The house, I'm pretty sure, is not the same house as the first two films, and the main character from them films is killed off in the first 5 minutes. But it's more of the same of House 1 and 2, really, just not as good. House 1 and 2 are definitely the better films in this franchise. Next up, we have House by the Cemetery. I don't know who's more annoying in this movie, the kid, Bob, or his mother, who just goes, Bob, Bob. That's all she says. I didn't like this movie, in all honesty, guys. I know a lot of people love it, but the reveal at the end, all that waiting just for that, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this, to be honest, guys. I'm not going to lie. The House of the Devil from Ty West. This is a movie about a babysitter who is asked to obviously babysit, but there's something weird going on in the house and the surroundings of it. Yeah, really enjoyed this. I think this is a really good... like Ty West is definitely inspired by the 70s, and this feels like a 70s movie, even though it's not, but it definitely feels like one. Just totally works. I think Tom Noonan's in there. I think it's him who's like the person who's asked to babysit, and he's just like a weirdo. He always is in every film he's in, isn't he? I need to know if it is Tom Noonan now. Sorry about, yes, it is Tom Noonan. But yeah, cool film. Quite enjoyed that one. The House on the Edge of the Park. Now, I'd always wanted to watch this film, and I just never got to it. But I finally watched it on 4K when the 88 Films brought it out. I think that's the same artwork, yeah. And this is about David Hess, who played a lot of strange villains back in the day, like in Last House on the Left and stuff. And his deranged brother, and they get invited to this rich guy's party. And when they get there, the rich people are sort of taking the piss out of them a little bit. David Hess does not take too kindly to that, so he starts to terrorize them and flips it on its head. But I just thought this was an excuse to do a lot of rape scenes and bits of stabbings here and there. But by the end of the film, the story uncovers, and I thought it was quite well done, actually. Kind of surprised me, the ending. So yeah, not a bad film, actually. I put it 10th in my top 10 first-time watches of 2023. Look good on 4K, too. The Human Centipede, the only one I own out of 3. I'm probably going to have to try and get an uncut version of the second one when I finally get my Region B player, all-region player. But the second one is definitely more brutal than this. However, this is still a good little film, I think. A lot of people are grossed out to hell by this movie, and I suppose it is a little bit gross, but I've seen way worse than this. But as a film overall, I don't think this is too bad. The Dieter Laser, who plays the mad surgeon in this, he's great. The Hunt, one of my top 5 movies of 2020. Betty Gilpin, who is in this movie, is fantastic. I love her. This is kind of this is a game going on, and it's like people being hunted by these rich characters and stuff. But yeah, I had a really fun time with this. I really like the first 10-20 minutes of this film, where you think you're following the protagonist and they're killed, and then it switches to someone else, and then someone else. But Betty Gilpin is finally the main protagonist of this film, and she is great in it. Really great violent moments in that movie. I had such a good time with that at the cinema. Next up, we have I Know What You Did Last Summer, the box set from 88 Films. So first up, we got I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, I watched this back in the day on VHS. I thought it was quite good, and then I watched it again when I picked this box set up. I really appreciated the story. I thought it was such a better film on rewatch. I'm not a big fan of Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character in this film, but the other 3 were characters I could get on board with and stuff. The killer's okay. I don't think he's one of the best horror icons or anything, but he's okay. Just try and get this next one out. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It's an okay sequel, but this is just full of dumb character decisions. Someone is killed in Jennifer Love Hewitt's apartment in this, and she's already wary because of the year before. And when she comes back, the body has been moved, and all her friends tell her that she's imagining things. And she goes, "Oh yeah, I think I am." Then she goes on a sunbed and puts her Walkman in, her headphones, and just closes her eyes. So what's going to happen then? Yes, lots of people start dying while she's just lying there after she's just seen this dead body in her hotel. And the director banks on the audience not knowing what the capital of Brazil is. Need I say more? If you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. And then we do have I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, I didn't really like this film, but it is a very, very low budget movie. They did what they could with it, but it's not great. So many unlikable characters and stuff in this. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely tell they don't have the budget of the other two films, though. Straight to VOD movie and stuff. But I'm glad to own that nice little box set. I believe we're getting another I Know What You Did Last Summer coming down the pipeline. So maybe I'll review them three on the channel when that comes out. Incident in a Ghostland. I picked this up on a little bit of a blind buy. And you know what? The first 30 minutes of this movie, or first 20, are brutal as hell and quite scary. And I think it's a really clever movie when it all comes together at the end. It's these two girls and their mum are moving to a new house, but someone is giving them grief on the road when they're moving there, sort of follow them into the house. But yeah, I think this is a really, really cool film. Definitely one worth checking out. The Incredible Melting Man, another low-budget movie from the 80s, I believe. Yeah, I think it's the 80s. Sorry, my mind goes blank sometimes when I do these videos, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know everything. But I think it's the 80s. The Incredible Melting Man, I didn't quite... It's a cool title, one of the best titles for a horror movie ever, isn't it? But I didn't really get on board with this movie. It didn't really do much for me, unfortunately. Infinity Pool, my number one movie of 2023. I missed this at the cinema because it was on so late. But I finally picked the Blu-ray up and I was absolutely blown away by this film. Alexander Skarsgård and his girlfriend go to this island and he accidentally runs someone over. And the punishment for... I think he runs someone over, yeah, and the punishment for that is death, even though it was an accident. And he learns that if you've got a bit of money, you can get out of this and basically see a clone of you be executed and you get off with it. Now, I won't say too much more than that, but man, this movie just goes places and I was just gripped from start to finish. And Mia Goth is friggin' excellent in this movie. Bit of a franchise coming up now, guys. Insidious. The more I watch this film, the less impact it has. I do think the first half of the movie is definitely better than the second half. It's still a very good film from James Wan, but definitely way more effective the first time I watched it. And it did actually freak me out at the time. But when we get to the further and stuff, I kind of lose interest a little bit. The first half is definitely better. Insidious 2, probably my least favourite movie in the franchise, to be honest. This one just went for way too many jump scares and stuff. However, there was one jump scare that really did get to me in this. But overall, not a very good sequel. Insidious 3, probably the best one in the franchise alongside the first. Lee Whannell knocked it out the park with this. I think this was such a surprise and a very, very underrated film. But yeah, Insidious 3, definitely an improvement over 2. And Insidious The Last Key, another one that isn't great, but I definitely liked when we explored... she's a hot icon, man. Lynn Shay, when she was younger and living in the house and stuff, and how she started seeing demons first. Really loved all that part of the movie when we were exploring that. But yeah, it's alright, Insidious The Last Key. And we do have Interview with a Vampire. Only ever seen this movie once, and I gotta be honest, guys, it bored me to tears. I just could not get into this movie when I watched it. But it was a very long time ago, so maybe on rewatch at some point. Because I know a lot of people love this film, but I just wasn't vibing with it, in all honesty. Okay, guys, so when I was going through my H section, I forgot to show High Tension off. This is because on my other channel, where I do a lot of Blu-ray updates, I put them to one side, my newer bought movies, and then show them off. and then put them in the shelves behind me. And I just totally forgot that this was to the side. But this is quite a newish release from Second Sight. Nice big thick box set there. This is a 4K. And this is a great French extreme movie that came out in about 2003, I think. I've reviewed this on the channel fully, so go check that out if you fancy seeing my full thoughts. But this is basically about two girls who go to this house. It's at one of the girls' parents' house, and this maniac comes and bludgeons the family and kidnaps one of the girls. It's a really brutal film, but there's a twist in this that a lot of people hate, but I actually really liked it. It made the movie stand out for me, so that is High Tension. Next up, we're right on the letter I, around the letter I now, aren't we? And that is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, I've never really was a big fan of this film. I have only seen it once, but I remember being a little bit bored by it. With Donald Sutherland in there. I don't know, it didn't really connect with me. I'll probably have to give that another watch, because I know a lot of people do like this film, but I watched it about 10 years ago or something, and it just wasn't connecting with me, unfortunately. Next up, we have The Invisible Man, my second favourite movie from 2020. Leigh Whannell is a great upcoming director, I feel, from the movies I've seen from him. And we've got The Wolfman coming from him this year, so another take on the Universal monster movie. But yeah, this is a really great film. This surprised the hell out of me. I remember seeing the trailer for this thinking, oh, the trailer's because he's just showing the whole film, but I was pleasantly surprised, and Elizabeth Moss puts a great performance in. The restaurant scene in that is something to behold. You can't believe what you're seeing. I Saw the Devil, one of the best foreign movies I've ever seen. I think it's a Korean film, and this is basically a cat and mouse revenge thriller that it just feels different, doesn't it? A lot of these foreign movies just feel totally different to what Hollywood churns out now and again. Some brutal shit in this movie. Highly recommend it. It's a fantastic film. I See You, which is about people who basically... I can't say that because it'll give it away, but there's stuff happening in someone's house, and you can't quite get your head around what is happening, like why these things are moving around, why these objects are just sort of going from place to place. Things are just seeming very strange, like there's a ghost in the house, basically. And something happens halfway through the film, and it starts to make sense and unravel what is actually happening. Really interesting film. Highly recommend this one. It's something different. Yes, Island of Death, one of the worst movies I have ever seen in my life. I just hated every second of this film. These two characters, the main antagonist, if you like, who you're following throughout the film, are just the worst pieces of human garbage you've ever seen. And there's so many bad character decisions in this film that just irritated the life out of me. Very low budget filmmaking, but Nico Mastrakis, who made this film, you can do something with low budget if you try, but man, there's a moment where this body is dropped out of a helicopter and it's just this big paper mache thing. It looks terrible. I hate this movie so much. And I've been told to rewatch it again by a few other YouTubers who say you might change your mind, but yet to do it. Maybe I'll review it one day on the channel. Maybe it'll grow on me. And my wife said it's the worst movie she's ever seen as well. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen, but it's probably in my top 10. Next up, we have I Spit on Your Grave. Really cool revenge rape murder movie. Miss Hills, I think her name, Jennifer Hills. These guys take advantage of her, and she seeks to take them out one by one in very violent ways. Now, unfortunately, I do think this is cut out a little bit, this UK Blu-ray. I didn't realise at the time it was one of the very first Blu-rays I ever bought. It's a nice little box edition there. Yeah, one of the very first Blu-rays I ever bought, and if I knew that, I mightn't have picked it up. But can't quite remember what's cut out on it. But not sure we've had a fully UK released cut over here. The BBBFC, who are in charge of cutting movies and releasing movies, and they won't release The Abyss because there's this rat scene in it. They piss me off, man. They really do. But yeah, cool revenge movie. And it was a video nasty as well, of course. I Spit on Your Grave, the remake. Not a bad little remake. Does the same sort of thing. Some brutal kills in that one as well. Stephen King's It, the 1990 miniseries. One of my most rewatched movies, I like to call it, even though it is a series. I just see it as a movie now. I wasn't alive at the time when this was put on TV. I used to rewatch this all the time as a kid, even if it is 3 hours long. I love it to death. Definitely my favourite adaptation of Stephen King's It. I've read the novel as well, and it's just fantastic. The best book I've ever read, easily. Tim Curry is great in this, stalking the kids of Derry, Maine. And I like how it goes through each character's little story, like their backstory when they're kids and their first encounter with Pennywise. And then in the second half of the movie series, we do go back and they come back to try and fight this clown slash thing. But yeah, really, really good film. I love it. Next up, we have a documentary, Pennywise, the story of it. Now, when I go into the new movie room at some point, because my young lad's coming into this room, I'm probably going to put my documentaries in a different section. But yeah, I've just got it here for now, and that is Pennywise, the story of it. Now, the guys who made this made the Robo-Doc documentary and the recently released Robert Englund story, Hollywood's Dream and Nightmares, which I loved. And this is a really, really great one as well. So I'm really excited for what these guys can do in future. But yeah, it's just a big 2-hour deep dive into the making of the 1990 miniseries. Really, really recommend it. Then we have It, the remake. I was so hyped for this film. I think it was the most hyped I've ever been for a movie since The Dark Knight. I just could not wait to go and see this. And I was a little bit disappointed with it, mainly because of some stupid CGI decisions. But overall, it's still a good movie. I just don't like it as much as the 1990 film, but it's still solid. And then we have It Chapter 2. Unfortunately, I did not like this one, really. I like the opening scene in the circus and stuff. Thought that was kind of cool, but it goes on for way too long. And the part that where Beverly Marsh goes back to the house and that big CGI blob thing is walking around, I'm just like, what the hell is that? It looked better than the 1990 miniseries. And the spider scene in the 1990 miniseries looked better than this. What the hell were they doing with that? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the It Chapter 2, to be honest. I was just kind of disappointed. It definitely goes on too long. It Came From Beneath the Sea. Recently picked this one up not long ago. I just felt like a monster movie, and it was on in the sale, and I picked it up and I watched it. And I liked all the monster stuff, this big octopus smashing the town up and stuff. But there's a romance side of the story in there that takes up about half the runtime, and I just did not care for it whatsoever. I think that's a lot of the problems with these monster movies, isn't it? That human side of things just aren't interesting enough, unless that movie is called Godzilla -1, of course. But It Came From Beneath the Sea, it's not bad. It Comes at Night. This was in my top 10 first-time horror watchers of 2023. Yeah, I quite enjoyed this one. It's basically a post-apocalyptic world, but it takes place in this one house where this family's just trying to survive, or otherwise this virus will get them and kill them. So they're like very secure in their home. You know, they've got it all taped off and everything, so this virus can't get in. And this other family run into them, and they're running low on supplies, and he decides to take them in, and they become friends, and it's all about trust, the movie and stuff like that. Kind of like the movie Signs, where there's a big event happening in the world, but we see it from this one location. I like it when movies do that. So yeah, It Comes at Night, not a bad film at all. A24. And we have It Follows. I'm going to give this another watch soon, because we do have They Follow coming very soon. I think it's called They Follow. But yeah, this is a great movie. Maika Monroe just putting in a great performance here. She's one of the best actresses working today. And this is basically an STD turned into a horror movie, if it wasn't horror enough anyway. Basically, if you have to have sex to pass on this curse, otherwise you're just this curse is gonna come after you, and it's kind of disguised as humans, and then you just kind of walk towards the person it's trying to kill. Really, really creepy film. Really good idea. Highly enjoyed it. Next up, we have the Steelbook of Jaws. Just take that. I really hate J cards. I do. Yeah, debatable whether this is a horror movie for some people, but for me, I do think it is. It's a psychological horror film, because a lot of people were scared to go in the sea after watching this, myself included. But brilliant film from Steven Spielberg, the first big summer blockbuster, really, wasn't it? Basically, a shark is terrorizing this town, and then the second half of the movie, these guys go out to hunt it. I'm sure you've all seen Jaws. I've heard the 4K is really great, so I might upgrade it at some point. I don't know. But yeah. The back of this steelbook, though, is so lazy. What the hell is that? They could have done so much more with that. The front's great. So yeah, that is Jaws. Probably going to have to pick up Jaws 2, 3 and 4 just to check them out. I've never actually seen them movies. I've heard Jaws 2 is kind of fun. 3 and 4 not so much. Just never got round to them. No. Next up we have Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Really, really fun film. Really B-movie cheese. Knows exactly what it is. Very, very self-aware film. It's about clowns coming down into this small town America and just wrapping people in cotton candy and harvest them on their spaceship. It's as ridiculous as it sounds, but it's a really fun time. Definitely worth checking out if you just want a bit of fun. Next up we have Kill List, starring Neil Maskell, who is absolutely brilliant in the movie Bull, which is his most recent film I've seen. But he's great in this as well. And it's about these two assassins who get this list and they have to go and kill these 3 people. But it goes very, very sinister when they get to the 3rd person in the list. Won't tell you why, but yeah, great idea for the film. It feels like an indie movie. It might actually be, but yeah, something different. This one, highly recommend. British movie. Next up, we have Knock at the Cabin. This is a movie that made my top 10 of 2023 in my horror films, and this is about this couple and their daughter, this gay couple and their adopted daughter, and these 4 people knock at the house and say, "You're gonna have to kill one of you, otherwise the world's gonna end." And they're obviously not prepared to sacrifice an own member of their family, whether it be the daughter, the partner. And one of them starts to believe these guys, and the other one thinks they're totally crazy, kind of like the movie Frailty a little bit. And the events start to unfold. My biggest problem with this, it didn't have that M. Night Shyamalan signature ending. And I think a lot of people would have remembered this movie a lot more for the twist. But I still really loved it. I had a great time with this. And me and my wife were talking about it all night after we went to see it at the cinema. Dave Bautista and Rupert Grint put in great performances. I'd love to see more of Rupert Grint as a villain. Next we have Krampus. My cousin Michael gave me this one because he upgraded to 4K. This is a Christmas horror movie. It kind of feels like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation with the family all staying at the one place, but they don't really like each other. And then there's this Krampus monster at the centre of it. Yeah, it's a cool film. I quite enjoyed it. Land of the Dead from George A. Romero. Just a bit of sticker residue on there. Should have got that off by now. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this one. I think it was a little bit silly, to be honest. Not as good as his original Evil Dead, Night of the Living Dead trilogy. It's watchable, but there's some characters and stuff that I just don't like in this film, and the zombies are a little bit too much. The Last Exorcism, really, really great found footage film about this priest who he fakes exorcisms. He goes, well, he just says, well, every time I do an exorcism, people feel better. So it's all in the mind. And then he goes to this one girl to do an exorcism, Nell, I think her name is. And after he's done the exorcism, this shit's still happening and it starts to get worse and worse. So yeah, this is a really good found footage horror. I do recommend it if you like that subgenre. Next up we have Last House on the Left from Wes Craven, like big box set from Arrow there. Yeah, I've only seen this movie once. I still haven't checked out this Blu-ray. I watched it on DVD a while ago. I really should have watched that by now. I do plan to review this on the channel at some point. Another video nasty. David Hess is great in this film. It's a very, very dirty, gritty movie. I remember liking it, but not loving it, if you like. I was expecting a little bit more, but I should have checked this out by now. I bought this a long time ago. In fact, my wife got me it for my birthday a long time ago. So I really should have given this a rewatch by now. At some point, I will review it on the channel. Next up, we have Last House on the Left, the remake. I definitely prefer this one over the original from memory. I had a great time with this, and I just thought, yeah, this is more for me, more of a modern telling of the story. It's got the guy from Aaron Paul in there, yes, who's a bit of a psychopath. So yeah, not a bad film. One of the better remakes out there. The Last Matey, a horror slasher that all takes place in a cinema, which is a great location. I like some of the kills in this film. I like the guy who goes out smoking and he has a pull of a cigarette and his neck gets sliced and then all the smoke comes out of his neck and stuff. It's creative that way, but I wasn't really too fussed on the reveal of the killer. and there was not really much story there. It was basically just a movie to kill people and nothing else. It's okay. Last Night in Soho, one of the best movies of 2021. Edgar Wright with a fantastic original story to tell here. Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie putting great performances here. And this is basically about a dressmaker who moves to London. She rents this apartment and she kind of sees visions of this murder that happened in the 1960s. And she kind of goes into Anya Taylor-Joy's body and sees it all for herself. What happened? It's like a mystery movie with some horror elements in there as well, obviously. But yeah, really, really great film. Highly recommend it. What a story this is. Very, very clever film. Next up, we have Let the Right One In. You know what? I'm going to have to rewatch this. I've seen it. I remember quite a bit of it. But I've heard people talk about this film and what it actually means, and I can't quite remember that. The outcome of this movie, I can't remember actually seeing that. So now that I know that this movie is much more about a vampire young female vampire protecting this boy, I'm going to have to rewatch this again because I just can't quite remember the whole outcome of the ending. But I remember thinking it was quite good. But yeah, after just hearing people talk about it over the years on YouTube and stuff, I just can't quite put my finger on why I can't remember what the whole outcome of the film is. So it interests me, so I'm going to have to go and check that out again. Maybe I'll appreciate it a lot more. Next up, we have Life, a very, very underrated horror movie, sci-fi horror. It's kind of like Alien, where this life form is taking over this space station, but it's growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger. Was his name Calvin? I think they call it Calvin, the life form. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong there, but it's got a great cast. You know, Jake Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson, who I absolutely love, Ryan Reynolds. Really, really worth a go. Fantastic film. Next up, we have Toby Hooper's Life Force. Unfortunately, I have not got to this yet. I'm really sad to say, but it is very, very high on the watch list. So hopefully soon. Next up, we have The Lighthouse. Yeah, this was a movie that really didn't connect with me all that much. My friend Alex sent me this, so thank you so much, Alex. But another one I want to give another go to at some point, because The Northman was a film that I thought was exceptional. Maybe I was just missing something with this because it's the same director. But it's definitely got a great atmosphere, great sound design and stuff, and two great performances. I just thought it was a little bit too art housey and pretentious. But I do plan on watching it again at some point. Next up, we have A Lonely Place to Die, which is a really, really cool sniper stalker movie, which takes place in Scotland, I believe. And it's about these two girls who go mountaineering, and there's a sniper trying to take them out. Yeah, I remember really enjoying this one. Pretty underrated film there. Lords of Chaos. Hard to say if this is a horror, but it's a very, very brutal film. Rory Culkin invents this music called black metal, and this other guy joins the band who's an absolute complete psychopath. But it's a true story, or based on a true story. I was blown away by this film. I thought it was amazing. I really did. But very, very bloody and gory, so be prepared. But if you want a good true story with, that's really sinister, definitely give this one a go. The Lost Boys, one of the greatest, if not the greatest vampire movie ever made. It's definitely my personal favourite. Absolutely love this film. I don't know if there's much more to say, is there? I mean, everyone has probably seen The Lost Boys, but great characters in there, great soundtrack. Tim Capello with that I Still Believe is just amazing. Great little story. Yeah, it's a definition of 80s horror, isn't it? David Lynch's Lost Highway. David Lynch is one of my favourite directors out there, and this is one of his most interesting films. This couple wake up to videotapes that are being left on their step, and it's someone basically filming their house, which is really, really creepy. And halfway through, this movie just turns it completely on its head. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? But I still love this film. And there's a really creepy character in this one. So yeah, Lost Highway, excellent film. I just love the vision David Lynch has with his movies. Lover's Lane. I watched this one recently. I didn't really actually realise it was a Valentine's Day horror, even though I probably should with the name like Lover's Lane. I thought this was okay up to a certain point. The third act goes a little bit silly and the reveal is ridiculous of who the killer is. But it was okay. It felt very low budget compared to Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like that low budget 90s feel to it. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. It's watchable. Next up is Madman. I wasn't really a big fan of this movie when I watched it. I've only seen it the once, but it felt very, very cheap, and I just couldn't really get into it. Sit round the campfire and hear the tale of Madman. Next up, we have Maggie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose daughter who's about to turn into a zombie, and he's just trying to protect her at all costs. He doesn't want any harm to come to her, and these government kind of puts these infected in this farm place and keeps them there, but he won't let her go. Yeah, pretty dull and boring movie. I was quite disappointed with this one, but Arnold Schwarzenegger puts in a good performance. Malignant, one of the most interesting James Wan movies, in my opinion. Really enjoyed this one at the cinema. I remember coming out the cinema, kind of like Knock at the Cabin, thought that was good. And then on the way home, I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. I was like, that was actually really, really great. But yeah, it's kind of like a giallo movie at times. But there's a scene in this movie where a lot of people are taken out in a police station. And I just thought, wow, holy shit, this is amazing. So yeah, great film. Next up, we have The Mangler, another Tobe Hooper movie that I just have not checked out yet. But Robert Englund, I watched the documentary not long ago, and I really want to check this out now. It's pushing me more towards the top of the watch list. Like I said, I'm trying to check out the Tobe Hooper movies I haven't seen. This and Life Force, unfortunately, are just two of them. But yeah, it has an interesting concept about, I think it's like a killer paper making machine or something. Blue Ribbon Laundry, the laundry press holder is, I think it's killing people or something, and Robert Englund is the guy in charge of the company, I think. Maniac Cop, yeah, really fun film, this one. Another reason I want to go region 3 fully is to get Maniac Cop 2 and 3 in here, which I have seen years ago on DVD. But yeah, I quite enjoyed this one. But yeah, Maniac Cop, it's a cop going around killing people, so Bruce Campbell has to get to the bottom of it. Yeah, it's a fun film. The Man with the X-Ray Eyes, otherwise known as X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. I watched this on Prime and I thought it was pretty good, so I picked it up on this nice big box. I think it's from Second Sight again. 1960s movie, I believe. This guy who just finds a way to see through walls and stuff, but the eyes start to, you can see everything from these, and it just gets a little bit more sinister as the movie goes on. But yeah, I enjoyed that one. Next up is Martyrs, another French extreme movie. I'm sure Second Sight will be doing a box set of this at some point because they've done all the others, Frontiers and Inside, which I do want to pick up. Yeah, this is the most brutal of the lot, though. This is kind of a revenge movie, but there is something way more to it than that, where people are sort of trying to figure something out and they're using other people to try and figure that out. The opening scene to this is absolutely insane. Like, it was like, holy shit, this movie totally goes for it straight away from the off. Yeah, it's a very, very bloody, brutal movie, but one that is very, very interesting. Next up, we have The Meg, silly shark movie about a giant megalodon shark, and Jason Statham is trying to beat the shit out of it. It's okay. It's a bit of a horror comedy, this one. I haven't seen the second one yet, though. Next up, we have Microwave Massacre. This is a really, really fun, low-budget horror movie about this guy who's getting sick of his wife's cooking, and I think he kills her by mistake, and then he starts chopping her up, and he puts it in the fridge and then takes parts of it to work the next day, and he gives some to his friends at work, and they're like, holy shit, this is the best meat I've ever had and stuff. So we have to keep taking it into work. It's a very silly film, but I quite enjoyed it. It was kind of fun. Next up, we have Midsummer, Ari Aster's second film. I don't know which is better, this or Hereditary, but I absolutely loved this movie when I watched it. I was just so drawn in, and by the end I was like, holy shit, that was a thrill ride. Brilliant, brilliant performance from Florence Pugh, who goes to this this place where the cultists live, and after a family tragedy, and then things start to take a very sinister turn. It takes a lot of inspiration from the Wicker Man, but I definitely preferred this over the Wicker Man, I'm not going to lie. Next up we have Misery. More of a thriller, this one, really. I don't really know if I count it as a full horror film, but I threw it in there anyway. James Caan has an accident, and Annie Wilkes, played by Kathy Bates, takes him in and looks after him, and lo and behold, she is his biggest fan, and he lets her read the next part of his book, and she doesn't like the ending, so she keeps him there, and she's like flips. She's like very, very sinister woman. It's a unbelievable performance from Kathy Bates, and James Caan is also great in this movie as well. Do you know what? It could be a 10 out of 10, that film. I don't really have any negatives with it, so it could be a 10 out of 10 for me, that. Another Stephen King adaptation, The Mist. This is about a bunch of characters stuck in a supermarket, because there is this fog outside the supermarket, and if they go out there, these monsters will instantly kill them, kind of like A Quiet Place, them type of monsters. But well, not them type of monsters, but you know what I mean. If you go to this place, you're just going to be wiped out, basically. And the ending to this film is one of the most upsetting movie endings of all time. Not even just in horror, but of all time. But I really hate the religious woman in this movie. Can't stand her. She brings the film down for me a little bit. I know she's meant to be an annoying bitch, but man, I hate watching her. But overall, it's a pretty good film. Tom Jane's really good in that. Mother's Day. I've never seen the original. I know this is a remake, but you know what? This is a pretty underrated horror movie. A bunch of characters have just robbed a bank or something, I think, and they go to their old house where their mother used to live, and these people are living in the house now, and they end up taking them hostage. And then they phone their mother, played by Rebecca De Mornay, I think that is. And she's a great character in this movie as well, and she's kind of sinister, like her sons and stuff. Yeah, highly recommend this. It's pretty good. Really underrated film. Next up is The Mutilator, low budget, cheesy horror movie. A bunch of friends go to this like lake house, and there's a killer there, lo and behold. There's one moment in this film where this killer takes his clothes off to get in a swimming pool to kill somebody. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's very low budget though. I believe we're getting The Mutilator 2. Did that come out or not? I believe it was definitely in the works though. So next up is The New Kids. Yeah, I was quite surprised by this movie. Again, is it horror? It's a little bit of a vicious movie. These two kids move to a new town, these two teenagers, and these guys won't leave the female teenager alone, and it just turns very, very sour and starts to get a little bit bloody. So yeah, it's a pretty good film, this one. I really enjoyed it. New Year's Evil. Sorry, I'm just saying it like that because that's what the character talks like down the phone in this. I actually watched this recently at New Year. I was saving it till then. It's a fucking terrible movie, man. I really did not like this. Just some killer going around, killing people on the strike of midnight in different time zones. I do not recommend it. It's an 85-minute movie that just seems like 3 hours. It just wasn't good. Clive Barker's Nightbreed. Now, I've only seen this once, and it was definitely interesting. I wasn't really all up for the last 30 minutes of the movie, though, when this character, he keeps having visions of this place where he feels like he needs to go, where all these monsters live. He feels like he belongs there, and he keeps getting drawn to it, and it's all, this place sort of is by underneath a cemetery or something, and when he finally goes there, people are kind of against these monsters, and it turns out to be an all-out war and stuff like that. There's a very sinister character in here who's going around just killing families and stuff, but David Cronenberg makes an appearance in this film, and I think he's a pretty good actor. But yeah, it's not bad. I'm definitely going to have to give it another go, though, because there was something more to it that I just probably will feel like I could get on a second watch. And I believe that the other cut, the Cabal cut, is it? Is it the Cabal cut? I think it's the Cabal cut. Anyway, I think that gives you a little bit more insight into the movie, and they're meant to be totally different cuts. Nightmare Beach came second on my first time horror watches of 2023. I absolutely love this film. I picked it up for the artwork, to be honest, and I was blown away by this movie. There's so much more to it than a guy just going around killing people, but he is dressed as a motorcyclist, and he's going around this town killing all these spring breakers, but the sheriff and the police department are kind of at war with these bikers because they feel like they are bringing bad stuff to the area, and there's a biker going around killing people, which makes them look even worse, basically. But yeah, there's some great kills in this film. A lot of them are to do with electricity for some reason, but there's some other kills in here that are just awesome, and some great. Not the main protagonist, but his best friend. He's such a great character in this film. I highly, highly recommend Nightmare Beach. It's awesome. The Nightmare Before Christmas, another family-friendly horror movie, really. Bit of a musical. Tim Burton, he didn't direct this, but it was his ideas and his characters, and they just ran with it. Yeah, I love this film. My wife wants to watch it all the time, and I must admit, I'm just like, I've seen it that many times now. I'm kind of like, oh, here we go again. But it's still a fun time every time I watch it. And it absolutely flies by. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes. Nightmare City, wasn't a big fan of this one, unfortunately. Although I will say, if you just want to watch a movie with lots of kills in, this is for you, because there's like 50 fucking kills in this movie, man. But yeah, I just didn't like the zombies in this, just with the cereal glued onto their face. I wasn't a big fan of it. I'm not going to lie. Just a bunch of zombies. They're not even zombies. They're like people infected with the virus who've gone crazy. Just running around killing people. Nightmare on Elm Street collection. We definitely did a better box set than this now. But what can I say about this? It's my favourite horror franchise of all time. I love part 1. I love part 2. I love part 3 even more. It's my favourite out the lot. Part 4 is okay. Part 5, not great. Part 6 is absolutely dreadful. Oh my god, I can't stand that movie. Wes Craven's New Nightmare picks it up again with a good, interesting take on the franchise. I can gush all day about these movies, but I'm pretty sure you've seen them. Robert Englund as Freddy is just awesome. And I will review these on the channel at some point. I've really wanted to do it for a while now, but I'm just thinking, if a new Freddy film is on the horizon, maybe that's the time to go through these movies, like leading up to it. We'll see. But if it doesn't come to fruition in the next year or two, I'm just going to have to review them anyway. But I absolutely love this franchise. It's just, the reason I love horror is because of Robert Englund, really. And Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake, I don't think this is as bad as a lot of people say. Jackie Hill Healy isn't bad as Freddy. He's nowhere near as good as Robert Englund, but I don't think he's that bad. But it definitely has problems, this film. It hasn't got the charm, the heart of the 84 classic or anything. But I don't think it's that bad. I don't like it. I don't love it. I just think it's very, very... It's average. It's watchable. I know a lot of people hate that movie, but... Never Sleep Again, The Elm Street Legacy, an absolute 10 out of 10 documentary. Perfect. Goes through each one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies at great detail. Even like part 5 gets a good 30-minute section here, and this is like 4 or 5 hours long. It's got all the cast members in there. I loved hearing from, you know, all like the people you wouldn't think would be in there. Like, is it not Lisa Wilcox? Her name's Lisa in Freddy 2. Kim Myers. People like her. You know, I had a huge crush on it back in the day when I used to watch Freddy 2 all the time. Seeing people like her and stuff just pop up in this documentary and talk about how they made it. Jesse's dad, you know, it is wonderful. It really is. If you're a Freddy fan or even just a fan of movie making, you've got to give this a go. It's incredible. It really is. I've reviewed that on the channel as well. Night of the Creeps, watched this for the first time last year. I know I probably should have got to that by now, but yeah, this is a pretty fun film. A bunch of zombies in a high school, basically. And the two main characters are really, really fun in this movie. I like the tagline of this film. It's not on this cover, but it's it's the main tagline of the film, where your date's here. Good news, your date's here. Bad news is he's dead. Well, that was pretty fun. But yeah, Night of the Creeps, not a bad film. The Night of the Hunter with Robert Mitchum, who puts in a fantastic performance, who's trying to infiltrate this family, really. And he's a man full of deceit and lies, and he's really, really a creepy ass character. But yeah, fantastic film. Really enjoyed this one. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Should this be next to Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead? I don't know. But I'm planning on rewatching this one soon. I've just had this urge to watch it. I don't know why. It keeps popping into my head over the last few weeks. So I'm going to have to give this another go soon. But I remember really liking it. All taking place in this sort of cabin house. And the zombies are trying to break in. And all these characters are just holed up in there. They're coming for you, Barbara. Right, I don't really know if these two movies are horror or not. My cousin gave me them and I haven't watched them yet, but they are involving vampires, and that is Night Watch and Day Watch. So if these aren't full horror movies, guys, I do apologise for throwing them in here, but they've got vampires in, so they kind of must be. But I haven't watched these yet. Let me know if they're any good. Just put them there. Jordan Peele's Nope. Now, I bought this because I wanted to watch it again. I didn't vibe with it at the cinema at all. But I wanted to get this 4K because I got a feeling it's going to look awesome. And I do want to watch it again because a lot of people really loved this movie. And maybe I was missing something. So I do want to watch it again. I got this really, really cheap. So looking forward to giving that another go. Nosferatu, sent to me by my good friend Alex. Thanks so much, Alex, for sending me this. I watched this not long ago, but I was very, very tired watching this movie. I kept dropping in and out of it. So I'm going to have to give this another go. And when the new Nosferatu comes out, I'll probably review this on the channel. But I remember quite liking it, what I seen. I don't mind a good silent movie. The Man Who Laughs is probably my favourite silent film. I've only seen a handful, but yeah, I'm going to have to give this another go. Is this the first horror movie ever made, or was it at the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari? I know this is one of them, 1922 film, so this is 100 years old now. And we do have the new one by Robert Eggers coming out soon, of course, don't we? Oculus, what a fantastic horror movie this was. Just totally took me by surprise. About a haunted mirror, and everywhere this mirror goes, people are just dying. I highly recommend this. The woman off Jumanji is in this, and she's fantastic. Karen Gillan, is it? She's great in this. The Nun, probably one of my least favourite movies from the Conjuring universe. I just couldn't really get into this at all. I mean, it started off okay, but then it just kind of feels very dull and boring throughout. Two characters in this one location, and this nun's popping up every now and again. The Nun does look awesome, I will say that, but yeah, just a very, very bland film, unfortunately. The Nun 2 is much better, which I don't know. M. Night Shyamalan's Old. A lot of people hated this movie, but I thought it was a pretty good concept, and I quite enjoyed it at the cinema. I think the ending could have been a little bit better, even though it is a twist ending, but yeah, I quite enjoyed this. It was an interesting film. A bunch of people go to a beach and they're just aging very, very quickly. The Omen trilogy, one of the greatest horror movie trilogies out there, I feel. Enjoyed all three of these films. Definitely enjoyed the first and the second one a little bit more than the third. But the first one is definitely where it's at. It's an absolute stone cold classic, isn't it? About the devil's child, Damien. Looking forward to checking these out again when the first Omen comes out soon, because I'm going to review all these on the channel, hopefully. And the Omen, I've just got this real itch to watch it again. It's just one of the greatest horror movies ever made, and I love that moment where the woman throws herself out the window and hangs herself. It says, "This is for you, Damien." Also, David Warner's head just getting sliced off by that big glass window pane. One of the greatest horror movie kills ever there. Gregory Peck's great in this as well. Yeah, the Omen 2 is great as well, where they go to like this, I think it's like this army. He's kind of in the army for teenagers and stuff. And the Omen 3 he's played by Sam Neill, and he's looking on taking over the world, basically. But yeah, I haven't seen the Omen 4. I've heard it's absolutely terrible, so I've kind of just not bothered with it. I'm not sure if that was a TV movie. I don't really know anything about it, unfortunately. So I hold my hands up there. I haven't seen that one, and I have not seen the remake either. So they're going to be first time watches for me. Coming up to the first Omen. Next up is One Missed Call. Oh, I remember hating this movie. I don't remember too much about it. I just remember hating it, and it was just a very, very poor film. I think that's a remake of a Japanese or Asian film. Orphan, yeah, pretty cool film. This family, obviously adopt this young child, and as soon as they do, sinister things start to happen and murders occur. And there's a massive twist in this film, which I absolutely loved. The Orphanage, yeah, not really a big fan of this film when I seen it. A lot of people said it was absolutely fantastic and stuff, but I just remember it being a little bit dull. I couldn't really get into it all that much, unfortunately. We'll have to give it another go at some point. There's so many films that you deserve rewatches. You can see a film so much better on a second view, and I feel it's happened to me loads of times. The Others, great ghost story movie from Nicole Kidman. And their kids, they live in this big house and they're seeing things in the house. But this is another movie with a fantastic twist in it. Overlord, more of an action movie, this really, but the killing Nazi-made monsters in this film, it's a pretty slow movie. It's not as fast as I thought it would be, but overall, it wasn't bad. Paranorman, another family-friendly horror movie, really, about zombies and stuff. Great animation in this one. Wasn't bad when I watched it, but I can't remember too much about it, to be honest, guys. Next up, we got a little bit of a franchise now. Paranormal Activity, one of the most successful horror movies ever made at the box office. I think they made this for like £10,000 and it made over 100 million or something like that. Yeah, it's a really good found footage film that quite sent shivers up my spine. Something happening in the house, but it's all found footage and it just works. It's executed really well. Paranormal Activity 2, probably my favourite in the entire franchise. I like how it takes place like a day later and it's still following on from the first film. It's got a story in there. But I liked how the house has CCTV going around it. It's not someone filming or choosing when to film. There's just constant cameras going on in here. And there's a horrible neck snapping scene in this film that really didn't sit right with me. Paranormal Activity 3 goes into a little bit more lore about the family and the history of the family in this one. Yeah, it's not bad. There's a moment in this where it uses that sheet over the head ghost, but it totally works. That old cartoon ghost you see everywhere, or that cliche, or you'd see it on a Halloween kids program. It works though, it works. Paranormal Activity 4, I thought this one was alright, but it uses the advertisement of the Xbox Connect way too much. So that was definitely thrown in there by Microsoft. But it's not bad, it's one of the weakest though. The Marked ones picked it up again. I quite enjoyed this one. This is all based in Mexico and I had some really creepy, jumpy moments in this. So yeah, better than 4 in my opinion. And Paranormal Activity, the ghost I mentioned, you can tell there's a little bit more budget into this one because there's some silly CGI and stuff towards the end. Might be my least favourite one. Apart from Next of Kin, which is the 7th one, which I do not own. But this one 4 is my least favourite. But they're all watchable films. I think it's a pretty strong franchise for what it is. Pathology, I did not like this film at all. About a bunch of students who experiment on these bodies and stuff. But I just didn't like the characters in this film at all. They were all very unlikable. So, yeah, it wasn't for me. Bought that really, really cheap. The People Under the Stairs from Wes Craven, one of his best films in my opinion. I love how this is a home invasion film turned on its head. So these Bing Rames and his buddies, his buddy and this little kid called Fool, they break into this house to steal stuff because that is their landlord and he's just robbing off all the poor people. When they come home, they are like cannibals, murdering cannibal maniacs, and they've got people kidnapped who live under the stairs. But it's a bit of a horror comedy, this one, but definitely blends into the horror a little bit more. I used to be freaked out when the guy who's telling the story about this family saying, oh, when we were kids, we never walked past that house. It used to scare me a little bit. But yeah, great film. I really enjoyed this one. One of my favourite horror movies ever. I've seen it so many times. Pet Sematary, actually reviewed this in full on the channel not long ago, leading up to Pet Sematary Bloodlines. And this is a fantastic Stephen King adaptation. It's got a few problems, but it's a scary concept, especially when you've got kids now and you become a dad. Can you live without your loved ones? Well, there's a cemetery. If your loved one die, you can bury them there and they will come back, but they are not the same. There's something not right with them. And that is just a great concept, isn't it? So many creepy moments in this movie involving Zelda and stuff. And I love Judd Crandall in this film, you know, played by Fred Gwynn. Stay away from that road. Next up, we have the Pet Sematary remake, which I rewatched not long ago. And I did not like this at the cinema, really, but on rewatch, I quite enjoyed it. And I thought, why didn't I like this film? I think I was basing it all on Judd Crandall having that accent at the time, but he didn't. But John Lithgow still puts in a good Judd Crandall. And it's kind of turned on its head what happens in the original. In this one, kind of swapped around a little bit. And yeah, very, very dark film. The ending scene is pretty grim. It ends on a real sour note. Bit of a box set here now. We have the Phantasm box set. So I'll just go through these one by one. Me and my wife watched these not long ago. Oh, they're all mixed up, guys. I'll just keep it here. Phantasm, great film. I love the whole scene with the ball drilling into that guy's head and just spitting the blood out the back. That's awesome. Great score. But it can be a little bit of a confusing movie. The Tall Man is a great villain. Phantasm 2, just as fun, I feel. Maybe even a better movie. Phantasm 3 isn't bad either. I quite enjoyed that one. Some wacky characters in there. Then Phantasm 4, I didn't really like it because it uses a lot of deleted scenes and stock footage from the first film. You can just tell. And they kind of just muddled the movie up there. It wasn't really making sense for me. And Phantasm 5, Ravager, it's just got the weirdest look of a movie on it. It's like such a weird filter on it. I think I preferred it over 4, but by that point, I was really confused with the franchise. I'm not going to lie, guys. Overall, I did enjoy it. Definitely prefer 1, 2, and 3 more than the last two, though. It's got a nice Cream Man as the protagonist. Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. Now, I actually watched this on Shudder, and I quite enjoyed it, so I picked it up on Blu-ray. Yeah, so this house gets burned down, I think, and this woman's lover is burned down in the house called Eric, and then a mall is built on top of it, and he is sort of living in the mall, killing people off and stuff. Now, that cover art has got to be one of the greatest cover arts. I hope you can all see that without the glare, guys, that I own. Yes, that made me want to watch the movie that much. That's what made me want to watch the movie more than anything. But I checked it out on Shudder first, and I quite enjoyed it, so I picked it up. So that is Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. And we also do have Pieces, which is another great slasher movie, really. All takes place in a high school. A Spanish film, I believe. Yeah, I remember really enjoying this one. It wasn't bad at all. But it's been a very long time since I've seen it. So that is Pieces. Next up, we have Planet Terror. Now, this is a Robert Rodriguez movie that I just can't really remember. I know we've done the half and half with Grindhouse, him and Tarantino. Tarantino done Death Proof, and this is the more elongated version, like Tarantino's Death Proof, which has been released in an elongated version. Now, I can't remember too much about this movie, guys. I just remember not liking it all that much. Definitely prefer Death Proof over this. I'm not even sure it's a full horror movie. There's definitely horror elements in there. I just remember a crazed scientist in this who's experimenting on people, I believe, and there's a woman with a machine gun for a leg. Crazy movie, of course, but what do you expect from them two directors? Next up, we have Poltergeist, another Tobe Hooper film that I'm not fussed on that much. I think it's a pretty average horror movie. Look, it's fine, it's watchable and stuff, but I've just never jived with it like a lot of other people have. But yeah, I think it's worth a revisit, that one, at some point. It's been a while. Now, this is not really a horror movie or horror trilogy, this one, but I just included it anyway because a lot of people do think that it is. I'm not quite sure, but there's definitely horror elements in there, and that is Predator, the trilogy. And we've got Predator, which is obviously the best film out of these three, with Arnold Schwarzenegger in one of his best roles. Rest in peace, Carl Weathers, who we sadly lost last week. Predator 2 all takes place in, I believe it was New York, was it? Or the Bronx or something. Yeah, I can't fully remember. Oh no, Los Angeles, sorry about that. But yeah, I remember that being quite a bit of fun with Danny Glover in there. And Predators is okay, but Adrian Brody is definitely miscast. But the Predator is an awesome movie monster, isn't he? I really should pick up Prey as well, and I've never actually seen the Predator before that. Can't remember was it Shane Black who directed that? Prince of Darkness, a film I've never actually gotten to. I bought this last Halloween, or the Halloween before actually, with plans to watch it on Halloween, and I just didn't for some reason. But I'm going to have to check this out shortly, because it's a famous John Carpenter film, of course. Next up we have Prom Night. I remember this one being a little bit slow. Good start, good last 30 minutes, but the hour leading up to that is a little bit dull. Jamie Lee Curtis in there. It's okay though. Next up we have Prowl, and this is from the After Dark originals again, which aren't the best of movies, but this is definitely the best one, I think, out of that label. Cool little vampire flick. I think the vampire's being... it's travelling in the back of this lorry or something, I think. It's been a long time since I watched it, but I remember it being alright. Next up we have this Psycho collection box set. Now I'm going to have my horror card revoked here, guys, because I have seen Psycho, which I absolutely love. It's one of the best horror films ever made, in my opinion. Psycho 2, one of the best horror sequels. Absolutely loved it. Blew me away. Surprised how good it was. Great little murder mystery movie there. I've never actually got to Psycho 3 or 4. Now, in fairness, I don't think they've ever been available on Blu-ray here in the UK. And I just never got to them when they were on DVD and stuff. I was quite late to the Psycho franchise in life. Like, I seen the first one about 10 years ago, and then watched the second one about 5 years ago. So I really need to change that. I think we've all got them horror movies that are quite famous that we haven't seen yet, and this is one definitely for me. But I finally picked up this lovely box set from Arrow, which was only released a few months ago, and I do plan on watching these very, very soon. So that is the lovely Psycho box set from Arrow Video, probably one of the best pieces of physical media that I own. Next up we have a little franchise here. I only own the first three though. First we've got The Purge, which was a missed opportunity in my opinion. This one should have definitely been all on the street, but it's a home invasion film, which is a mad concept for something that is happening on a larger scale outside, and that can work for movies like Signs and stuff like I have mentioned, but just didn't for this one. It was an okay movie. It's an okay home invasion film, but the concept around it could have been expanded on so much better. And then we do have The Purge Anarchy, which did go to the streets and stuff, but I just feel like this was already the missed opportunity. It had already gone, and yeah, it's the best one in the whole franchise probably, but I still didn't love it, to be honest. This is probably one of my least favourite horror franchises. And we do have The Purge Election Year, which I thought was okay as well. They were trying to do something a little bit different with the politics side of things, but I didn't love it or anything. It was alright. Next up we have A Quiet Place. Yeah, really cool modern movie about these monsters that just attack if you make any sort of noise in this post-apocalyptic world. Brilliantly directed and starring John Krasinski, and Emily Blunt is also great in this as this couple with a couple of kids who are trying to survive. Great opening to the movie. I'm really looking forward to A Quiet Place Day 1, which we've just got the trailer for at the time of filming. So that'll be out soon, so looking forward to that. But yeah, pretty solid movie. And then we do have A Quiet Place Part 2, which I actually prefer slightly. Well, it's not even slightly, I do prefer it. Maybe mostly because of the cinema experience at the time with this film. I was just so happy in the cinema to see this on the big screen, because the audience was very, very quiet, and it really enhanced the experience. I think that's how you've got to watch this movie. Really like the abrupt ending as well. Now, that's why I'm a little bit concerned about A Quiet Place Part Day 1, because I feel like this one should have gone on to be a trilogy, but it looks like it's going back to a prequel of sorts. So I haven't seen the trailer yet, by the way. I'm going to be checking it out soon. It has only just come out, but the title alone suggests that. And we did get a lot of Day 1 in here, so let's just wait and see. Next up, we have Rabbit from David Cronenberg. Pretty good body horror movie, this. I always wanted to rent this when I seen it in the VHS shop, because this was actually the cover, and I was always wondering what that was. But basically, I think it's about a porn. Oh, the actress in it was a porn star, I think. And she's got like this thing growing under her armpit. That's, I think it's killing people and stuff. And it's got like an infection to it. It's a pretty cool movie. Next up, we have Julia Ducournau's Raw. Please release Titan on physical media, please, here in the UK. Another reason I'm going to be going region free soon. If you watch this video next year, all going well, there'll be some region free titles in there, because I'm getting a player very, very soon. But yeah, this is a pretty good movie. Something totally different. This girl who tastes human flesh for the first time and can't get enough of it. It's a pretty good concept. Radio on Off, I think the guys who made Radio Silence, is it? Who made Scream 5 made this, I think. This is a pretty good hide-and-seek movie with a brutal, violent twist to it. She's got all these rich family members are hunting her down, the family that she's just married into. What's her name? Samara Weaving. She's great in this. One of the Scream queens at the minute, isn't she? Yeah, really fun movie this. I like the ending as well. It was pretty fun. Re-Animator. Yeah, this wasn't bad, actually. Pretty fun movie. I love the scientist in this. I think he's a great character, and I love all the little talking heads, that he's carrying around and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm going to have to check out Bride of Re-Animator, because I've just never actually seen that one, but that was pretty fun. Next up, we have Wreck, a pretty good found footage movie. When I rewatched this with my wife not long ago, the last 20 minutes did great on me a little bit, because there's a lot of screaming and shouting in there, but everything leading up to that is pretty much perfect for a found footage movie and what it's going for. A crew of emergency service fire team are getting filmed, and they go to this apartment that they've been called to, and there's been an outbreak, put it that way, of a virus. But yeah, it's a pretty good film. Unfortunately, I wasn't big on Rec 2. I didn't like the whole religious cult thing going on there involving the zombies, and it just wasn't for me. Pretty disappointed in this movie, to be honest. Definitely prefer the first one a hell of a lot more. Red Dragon, can't remember too much about this. I'm not sure if it's a remake of the movie Manhunter. I think it is, but it's like a prequel to Silence of the Lambs and stuff. I remember liking it, but I can't remember too much about it. It's been a long time since I watched this. It was just like one of the first Blu-rays I ever owned. I've been collecting Blu-rays, guys, since like 2007? Batman Begins was one of the brand new releases I bought. So it might have been 2006 even. The dawn of Blu-rays. I was one of the first to get a player anyway. Or not one of the first, but when they first come out, I got a player instantly. And I've been buying them since. So whenever that was, 2006, 7, 8, around then. Next up, we have Red Eye. More of a thriller, this one. But I watched this for the first time last year, and I had a great time with it. Rachel McAdams sit next to Cillian Murphy on a plane, and he's got a plan up his sleeve for it. He seems very, very charming at first, but it does go down a very sinister route. And I love movies that take place on trains or planes. They just work for me, and this one is one of them. Really, really fast-paced film. It's only like an hour and 15 minutes. Absolutely, excuse the pun, flies by. Cillian Murphy is great in that, and I can watch Rachel McAdams in fucking anything, man. She will make me watch a movie if she's in it, put it that way. Next up, we've got Red State, like a cult religious movie where all these cultists are just going crazy. The ending didn't sit right with me. I know A Quiet Place 2 had an abrupt ending, but this one just felt even more abrupt, and it's like they ran out of money. That's what it felt like to me. But what's his name in it? He's pretty big in the horror genre now. What's his name? Kyle Gallner. I'm sure he's in this movie. But yeah, it's not bad. The Resident, another movie I'm very vague on the memory of. I think this guy who lives next door to Hilary Swank is kind of spying on her, but I can't remember too much about the guys, I've got to be honest. Bit of a forgetful film. Resident Evil, the 4 movie collection. Yes, I don't own the other 2 or 3 in this original franchise, because I'm just not a big fan of it. Resident Evil is a movie that I did enjoy a lot more second time, but I remember watching that back in the day, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is not the video game. And why did they just not adapt a video game? It's the easiest thing to do. The story is all there on a plate for you, but they just went down a totally different path. Remember making Apocalypse, because I had the Nemesis in, it wasn't bad. Resident Evil Extinction was okay. I like the whole desert location sort of thing they had going on there. And Resident Evil Afterlife, I can't remember the damn thing about it, but I remember really not liking that movie. So it's you can probably put this next to The Purge as one of my least favourite horror franchises, unfortunately. And this is probably my favourite one out of the lot, Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. There's a lot of problems with it. They try to do a little bit too much by having the first and second game coming together in there, and Leon is a bit of a joke character. He's my favourite character in the games, but he's like comic relief. But it gets a lot of things right as well, and it's faithful to the video game in a lot of ways. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this. I've only seen it the once. I'm looking forward to giving this a rewatch at some point. Because I'm a big fan of the Resident Evil video game series. So yeah, this wasn't too bad. And then we have the Ring box set. Now, I do like the first Ring. I thought it was a very interesting concept. And a bit of a freaky movie, especially when they go down the well and stuff at the end. The Ring 2 has got to be one of the worst horror movies I have ever seen. I hated that film with a passion. It was just way too ambitious for its own good, and I just couldn't stand it. I just wanted it to end so badly. That might be an unpopular opinion. I'm not really sure what many people thought on The Ring 2 are. Ring 0 picked it up a little bit, being a prequel to... is her name Sakara? I forgot the girl's name in this. Is it Sadeko? Her origins and how she became about, and how the video came about and stuff. So that wasn't bad, but Part 2 is really bad, but the first one is the best. Next up, we have Rosemary's Baby, absolute horror classic. Mia Farrow is fantastic in this movie. She's such a sweet, innocent young lady who has no idea what's going on around her, but she basically moved into this apartment with her husband or boyfriend, I can't quite remember, and they're having a baby together. And the people in the apartment take a huge liking to her, and her husband seems to take a liking to the people in the apartment as well. It's a very, very slow build. I wouldn't say the movie's slow, but the story takes its time to get there. And the last 10 minutes is just totally worth the payoff. It's worth watching the entire film for that end. And it's where it all unravels. Yeah, one of the best horror movies ever made, in my opinion. I absolutely loved this when I watched it. Only seen it the once, but I was glued to the screen. I would love to review this on the channel one day. But yeah, Rosemary's Baby is a solid horror flick. Definitely one worth checking out. I think that's probably one of my favourite horror movies from the 60s alongside Psycho. I'm sure it's 1968, I think. Yeah, I always second my guess myself on these videos, but I think it is 1968. Next up, we got Rubber. I was really looking forward to this indie movie when it first came out, about a rubber tyre going around killing people with telekinesis. But overall, it's a pretty silly movie, and I did not really vibe with it at all. Next up, we have Saint Maud from Rose Glass. Now, this is a pretty solid movie about this woman who's like a carer, but she's very, very devout Christian or Catholic. And this woman she's looking after doesn't really want to know more, and she kind of doesn't take a liking to that. But she goes down a very dark path, and things start to get a little bit out of control. But the last second of this movie blew me away. The literal last second of it. You just got to keep your eyes open for it, and you're like, holy shit. And then it is up to you to decide and interpret what is really going on. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Salem's Lot. One that I watched for the first time not long ago, guys, to be honest. I know a lot of people love this movie. Well, TV series, whatever you want to call it. Miniseries. But yeah, I didn't love it. Okay, I'm gonna have to go back and give this another go. And when the new one comes out, I'll probably go back and watch this again. But there is some cool moments in it where the vampire is at the window and stuff. David Soul's pretty good in this. But yeah, I'm gonna have to give this another watch. It's just one of them I got very late to, and maybe it just weren't clicking with me because I don't know, it was a little bit dated or something. But yeah, I'm gonna have to give this another go, unfortunately, guys. Next up, we have Salo and the 120 Days of Sodom. And not a full horror movie, but it's a pretty disturbing and brutal flick about these teenagers who are all kidnapped by these 4 rich guys, and they just seduce them. begin to torture mentally and physically and sexually, and it is a pretty brutal watch at times. Next up we have Santa Sangre from Alejandro Jodorowsky. Again, not full horror, but there's definitely lots of horror elements in here, and it's a pretty weird watch. Like, it's just a weird film. Like, this woman, I say it is a horror actually. This woman who's, I think his son escapes from a mental institute, and then he comes back and she uses him as like a circus act because he's controlling her arms. She's got no arms, so she uses his arms to do these circus acts and stuff, but she goes around killing people with his arms. It's a very, very strange film, and that's what you expect from Jodorowsky, don't you? He's made El Topo and stuff, but I remember quite liking this one. It's just a very, very, very strange movie. Right, next up, guys, we got a franchise, and I've mixed them up a little bit here, so I'll just get them in the right order. So, one of the greatest horror movies ever made, with probably the best ending to a horror movie ever. My jaw was on the floor when I seen this, when the end unraveled itself. Yeah, I love it. It's in my top 10 horror movies of all time. Not in love with the franchise, but this first one is solid, and I used to watch it constantly back on DVD. John Kramer, who's you've all seen Saw. I don't need to explain it, do I? Let's be honest. I don't have to go through the storyline of that one. Then we have Saw 2, which I was absolutely blown away by back in the day as well. Probably one of my favourite horror sequels of all time. I just thought this was going to be a cash grab, and it wasn't. It was a pretty damn cool story. And that pit where I forgot her name. Mine's escaping me again. Is it Amanda? She's thrown into that pit full of used heroin needles. And then we got, I'm just trying to get these in the right order, guys. Saw 3, a lot of people love this movie. I just thought it was okay. Started to lose a little bit of interest with Saw 3. It just wasn't on par with the first 2 films. Then we do have Saw 4. Can't remember a damn thing about this one or this one, to be honest. Just knocked the mic there. Hope everything is okay. Can't remember a damn thing about either of these, to be honest, guys. It's been, I think, I've only seen them once, and I didn't really fall in love with them all that much. I'm thinking about maybe doing a Saw franchise review series leading up to Saw 11, but that's going to be a tough ask. I'll have to wait and see with that one. Next up, we have Saw 6, which I do remember, and this is probably my 3rd favourite. Well, it's now my 4th favourite after Saw X in the franchise. A pretty good one about a shoddy businessman, and he gets a real horrible death scene at the end involving these pipes full of acid. Then we have Saw 3D, definitely the worst one in the entire franchise. I just didn't like this one at all. The production value was so low in it, and it was just getting absolutely ridiculous by this point. And that is called Saw 3D forever now, just because of a cinema release for a month. Next up, we have Jigsaw. I thought I was going to hate this film, but it picked it back up for me and had that high budget feel again, that good production value back to it. Saw 7 felt like a low budget film, but I remember thinking this one was alright. I think it all takes place on the one location, like this house. Next up, we have Spiral, the Book of Saw. I was very excited for this film to see Chris Rock's vision and what he had in store. His acting is a little bit off at times for me when he's trying to be this hard guy, and I'm like, no, that's not you. And it's interesting to see Samuel L. Jackson in there. I thought he was pretty good in the movie. The reveal at the end was ridiculous, seeing it coming a mile away, but there are some good traps in this movie, I feel. And next up, we have Scanners from David Cronenberg again. There's a great head explosion scene in here, probably the best head explosion scene ever. But I didn't fully love the movie, in all honesty. I just thought it was pretty dull and boring and dragged in a lot of places. Alright, another franchise now, guys. We do have Scream. Yes, one of the best horror movies ever made, isn't it? Wes Craven absolutely reinvented the slasher genre back then, with it being sort of a parody of itself, but also being very clever and respecting itself at the same time. Love this film. Did not see that ending coming with the 2 killers, but yeah, it's a great movie with one of the best horror movie openings ever. Then we do have Scream 2, pretty solid sequel. Quite like this one. I like the whole university setting. Some good characters in there. You know, she got like these new bunch of friends in this one and stuff. As Neve Campbell, Sarah Michelle Gellar in there as well, who gets a great kill scene. But yeah, Scream 2, it's pretty good, but it's got one of the cringiest moments ever in a movie. With the guy off Stand By Me, I forgot his name, Jerry O'Connell, when he's dancing on the table. I'm just like, holy shit, please hurry up with this scene. Scream 3, great opening to this film, but I think this is probably my least favourite in the franchise. However, it's still a pretty good movie. I don't like the reveal at the end. I feel like it cheats the audience a little bit, because you think this killer is dead and he's not. But it was a good idea to go to the the stab set and make it take place there. But there's some kill scenes in this, like that the killer just relies way too heavily on so many things going his way. It's like a step thing to, I think it was a house blowing up or something. And it's just like, it really took me out of it. And there's some comedic moments in there. Jane Silent Bob in this, and Carrie Fisher's playing herself, going, I didn't get the part of Princess Leia because I didn't want to screw George Lucas. And I'm just like, yeah, stop it with the comedy. Scream 4, probably my second favourite sequel in the entire franchise. I know that's a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I thought this really brought the franchise back. It had an awesome killer in this, and it's probably got the worst opening, I'll give it that, but I just had a lot of fun with this film. I really did. Brutal in places. Yeah, I really love Scream 4. Then we have Scream 5. I thought this was, a lot of people loved this a lot more than me. I don't think it was the reinventing the series or anything like that. It's just a pretty solid Scream film. Probably my second least favourite next to Scream 3, but I still really like it. Then we have Scream 6, which is probably my second favourite sequel, to be honest. Apart from the last 20-30 minutes, everything up to that was perfect, in my opinion. I loved all of it, especially the subway scene, where it's very, very tense. And I love the opening, where you think, where we sort of see the Ghostface killer. I thought they were going to do that for the whole movie, but they don't. That's something I've been asking for a while with this series. However, I don't think it would work for the full runtime. Who knows? And there was another, oh yeah, the convenience store scene where he's got the shotgun and stuff. That was awesome. So yeah, I'm glad I didn't watch the trailer going in, because that would have ruined that whole sequence for me. Scream 6, I really like this movie. I really like the new characters we get, Mr. Barrera and Jenna Ortega and stuff. God knows what's going to happen with Scream 7. Speaking of Scream 7, is 7. Yeah, more of a thriller movie this, but I threw it in anyway, because it's one of the best films ever made from David Fincher. Great casting there of two detectives. One's upcoming, one's retiring within a week, and there's this killer going around committing the 7 deadly sins. Up there with Fight Club as David Fincher's best film. Absolutely love it. Just a brilliant crime thriller / horror. I've got to say that, haven't I, to let it in here. The Shallows, Blake Lively is stuck in the middle of the sea on this little island while this shark circles and she can't really get off it. I thought she put in a great performance in this, and you know what? I thought this was a pretty solid shark movie. I highly enjoyed it. Shaun of the Dead, not a movie I loved when I first watched it, but me and my wife watched the Cornetto trilogy about last year, and it really grew on me. I actually really enjoyed it a second time around. One of the best horror comedies out there, I say. So I think I just didn't love it at the time because I think I was just getting overpowered with zombie shit, and there was just so many zombie movies coming out, so many horror comedies at the time, and I was like, no, I just want pure horror. But I actually really enjoyed it this time around. The Shining, not much more to be said. One of the best horror movies ever. Love Jack Nicholson's performance as Jack Torrance in here, and I know Stephen King wasn't a big fan of this, and he had heated debate with Spielberg. It's not Spielberg, Stanley Kubrick, and but I'm with Stanley Kubrick, man. I think he done a fantastic adaptation of this. Now, I really want to check out the Shining miniseries because my friend Mike over at Cinema Maxman says he actually prefers that. I just never fancied it. I thought it looked terrible, but I've actually heard a few people on Twitter now saying how much they liked it as well because they've just brought a Blu-ray out. So I'm going to have to check that out. shocker, Horace Pinker, what a villain he is in this movie. Just absolutely brutal, isn't he? And he's a guy who gets the electric chair, and I think he comes after the detective who put him away, or the detective's son. Can't quite remember. It's kind of like that movie House 3. But yeah, lots of great kills and stuff in here. Yeah, I quite like this one from Wes Craven. Like, it's a little underrated horror gem. Next up we have Streams. Was not a big fan of this at all. There's just so many stupid sequences where people are tripping out and getting killed, and I just knew that was going to happen. I'm not a fan of scenes like that where people aren't really seeing what they're seeing, and it just didn't work for me. I wasn't a big fan. Next up we have Signs from M. Night Shyamalan, one of his best movies. Like I said earlier, I like the way this all takes place in the one location, but something on a big, grander scale is happening on the outskirts of this farmhouse. And Joaquin Phoenix, in one of his more earlier roles there, I love the scene where he's watching TV and that alien walks across, man. That movie, that scene scared the shit out of me back in the day. What a jump scare that is. But yeah, you got Rory Culkin in there, young Rory Culkin as well. I think the kids do a good job in this movie. Mel Gibson's awesome as well. I really like this film. The Silence of the Lambs, and again, one of the greatest movies ever made, isn't it? Brilliant performance from Anthony Hopkins, who was in this movie for about 15 minutes screen time, but he's the star of the show. But Jodie Foster is absolutely brilliant in this as well. She's trying to track down this killer who's skinning women, and she feels like Anthony Hopkins' character, Hannibal Lecter, will know something about it. So she's like interrogating him and stuff to try and catch him. Great escape scene in this from Hannibal Lecter, man. That scene is awesome. But yeah, really good atmospheric crime thriller, this one. And we do have Silent Hill. I loved the first game back in the day. Never played any of the others, even though Silent Hill 2 is renowned for being one of the best horror games ever. And we are getting the remake, so I will check that out. But I've just never checked this movie out. So there's a lot of Silent Hill stuff coming this year. Silent Hill 2, the remake, and some other games, and a movie. So I'll check that out very, very soon. So looking forward to this. Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 in a little box set here. Yeah, I didn't love the first one when I first watched it, but I rewatched it at Christmas and reviewed it on the channel, and it really grew on me. I thought there was a cool little story in there, and how it deals with trauma really well. I seen the much bigger picture when I watched it for the second time. Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 actually went the other way. I thought it was kind of fun the first time I watched it, and now I just think it's one of the worst movies ever made. I absolutely hated it the second time I watched it. It's got the worst acting ever in from Eric Freeman. Yeah, I mean, the first one is pretty good though, a really solid horror slasher. I love the grandpa in it who's going, "You better run, boy, have you seen Santa Claus? You better run for your life." It's pretty brutal in places as well, especially the opening scene. But yeah, I'm going to have to pick up Silent Night, Deadly Night 3, 4 and 5 in that little box set from Vectro, is it? I don't own the Regent replayer yet, but that's one I'm going to pick up because I really enjoyed Part 4. I thought it was one of the best ones. After the first movie, that would probably be my favourite. Next up is Sinister. This movie terrified me, man. The idea of watching videotape snuff movies of the house you're living in, families being murdered after you've just moved in. Fuck me, man. That just made my bones chill. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty good movie, this one, from Scott Derrickson. I really enjoyed it. The Sixth Sense. I only seen this once, and I knew the twist going in. So, I don't know if it really hit me as much as everyone else, but it was still a good movie from what I remember. Really well done, but I watched this a really long time ago. The Slayer. Not a great film, to be honest. I don't even think the ending makes sense in this movie from what I remember. It's just full of unlikable characters, a silly monster. I just did not like it. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, to be honest. But that artwork is pretty damn incredible. Okay, so again, the problem with not having the Region 3 player, we do have Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers, and Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland. Now, I have reviewed both of these on the channel, along with the first and the fourth and the fifth one. But I really liked this. I thought this was a solid sequel. I had so much fun with it, even though it is more comedy than horror. But I really, really had a fun time with this. I really did. Angela was great in this movie, played by Bruce Springsteen's sixth sister. What's her name? I'm going to have a quick look here. Yeah, it's not telling me. Pamela Springsteen, is it? Pamela Springsteen. Yeah, she was great in this. She was so much fun. And we do have Sleepaway Camp 3. It was alright. A lot of the kills were a little bit silly and off screen. But like there was a lawnmower kill and they cut away before all the blood ensues. It's like they had no budget. And they did film this straight after 2, I believe, to get it out there quickly. But it's okay. Sleepy Hollow. This is the latest Blu-ray, or 4K should I say, that I have actually picked up. I've never actually seen this film, but I heard the 4K was fantastic to look at. And when I heard my friend Keith over at your Euphoria Pictures talk about this, how good the transfer was, he said it was like the best transfer of last year. I thought, you know what, I've always wanted to watch Sleepy Hollow, so here's my chance to grab it now. And so yeah, I got the 4K. Haven't seen it yet, guys. I'm looking forward to it, though. Me and my wife really wants to watch that as well, so we'll be watching that very soon. Slugs, not a bad little movie about a bunch of slugs taking over the town. They're like in the drainage system and stuff, and then they start to... I think there's a scene at a restaurant where it's like kind of ripping off Alien, and all these slugs are coming out this guy, that it's infected. It's alright, it's not bad. Next up, we have Smile, one of my favourite horror movies from 2022. Borrows a few elements from It Follows, but definitely enough to do its own thing. If you look at this person who's got this smiling thing going on, you become cursed, and it's about this woman, Kevin Bacon's daughter. What's her name? Sosie Bacon, and she's trying to uncover how to save herself and why this curse is happening. So because this person has smiled at her and killed herself, and now the curse is on her. Yeah, pretty fun movie. I'm looking forward to Smile 2 as well. Oh, this is a brutal film, guys. This is Snowtown from Justin Kirtle, who reminds me of Shane Meadows, but much darker. He makes movies feel so real. Knit Ram is another great movie that he made. It's not a horror, so it's not in this, but man, that was so real, and it's on a true story. And this is also based on a true story about this Australian killer. I forgot his name, man, but Stephen Bunting, is it? Something Bunting, I think. I just hope I'm not mixing it up with this Star player. Sorry about that. Don't start laughing on camera, Jordan. But yeah, he goes around killing like paedophiles and stuff, and he gets his new girlfriend's son to come along with him and sort of forces him into the ride. But there's a strangulation scene in this movie that is one of the hardest things I've ever had to watch. And I've seen a lot of brutal films like Human Centipede 2, Salo, Serbian film, but man, that was a real rough scene to watch. So yeah, Snowtown is really worth checking out, and it's just such a realistic film. It really is. Next up, we have Species, the box set. Yeah, I've only ever seen the first 2 movies. The first one I've seen quite a few times, not because Natasha Henstridge gets naked all the time, but because it's quite a good movie about this alien who's trying to mate with humans on the planet so his species can be born and take over the planet. She's going around, trying to look sexy and stuff and sleep with any guy she can see. And this government scientists are on her tail trying to catch her. Species 2, I remember watching on... There was this thing back in the day. I can't remember if it was called Front Row or something. And it was like the box office of movies on Sky. So they had their own little box office channel for new movies, and you could see them before they come on Sky. My friend had a chipped box, and so we watched Species 2, and it was alright. It just wasn't as good as the first one. Haven't seen 3 or 4 yet. Heard they're absolutely terrible, but they still might be fun. I don't know, but I'm looking forward to checking them out. I'm going to watch them all from the first bit again. I hate talking about movies that I haven't seen, man. I really should watch all of these. My list of movies to watch is about 80 long in this collection, but I do have 1,500 movies in my entire collection. Split, which is the sequel to Unbreakable, but does it. It's definitely its own thing. It's only a sequel by the end, isn't it? But this is about a guy with so many split personalities, and he kidnaps. Is it Anya Taylor-Joy? When she's really young, I'm sure it is. Kidnaps her, and he's just got all these split personalities, and he's quite menacing. But there's this one personality that's trying to break out of him, and it's the darkest personality that he has, which is lurking within inside him. James McAvoy, excellent in this movie. But I love, my favourite of the trilogy is definitely Unbreakable, man. That movie is amazing. Split second, my friend Adrian, who I used to work with, told me to watch this, and I thought this was a pretty good film. It's about a load of killings in the city, and Rutger Hauer's trying to uncover what's happening, but it actually might be a monster, not actually a person, a serial killer. So, pretty interesting concept. I thought this was okay, but I think I was falling asleep towards the end. So I'm probably going to have to rewatch this one, in all honesty. But I love Rutger Hauer, man. Next up, we have Stitches, a British movie about a clown where he is killed accidentally at a kid's birthday party. He's played by Ross Noble, who's a comedian, I believe. And he comes back many years later when the kids are having a 16th birthday party to get his revenge. It's a pretty fun film, bit low budget, but it's quite fun. I quite liked it. It's like an indie movie. Next up, we have The Strangers. Now, I wasn't a big fan of this film back in the day. It's a home invasion movie where these three masked assailants just come in. And there's some creepy moments and stuff in here. However, I'm going to be rewatching this very, very soon, because we do have the new Strangers trilogy, like Strangers Chapter 1 coming out in May, I believe. I want to give this one another go, and I've heard Strangers Prey at Night is a pretty solid sequel. I just never checked it out because of this one. But I'm going to be checking them two out nearer the time. So looking forward to giving this one another go. You've always got to give films a second chance, I feel. Straw Dogs, a film that didn't really resonate with me all that much. I'd heard a lot about it, but I just didn't really care for it all that much, to be honest. I much preferred this one, the remake with Alexander Skarsgård. Yeah, I don't know why. I just did. It just worked better for me. A more modern take on the story. Just thought it was a lot better. The Stuff, yeah. I thought this was okay, but I didn't love it. And I think the whole movie is a metaphor for drug taking and addiction, just disguised as this stuff called The Stuff. It's really a message about drugs, I feel. But it's pretty fun to see this frozen yogurt sort of take over people and stuff. Yeah, it was alright. Suspiria, probably the most overrated horror movie I think I've seen. Only seen it once, but I didn't really think too much of it. And look, I thought it was okay. I like the use of colour of red that Dario Argento does and stuff. And the main actress, what's her name, man? Oh, God. I'm sorry, it's escaping me. I should know that. Jessica Harper. She's pretty good in this film, and it's a good concept and stuff. I just think the score, which was really good at the start, was overplayed, and there's a door scene at the end where they're trying to break down a door, and it is the most longest breakdown of a door you've ever seen. But yeah, I'm going to have to give this one another go as well. I will review this on the channel one day. I'm looking on doing a few giallo films like Blood Red and stuff. Deep Red, sorry. Sweeney Todd and the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I'm not really a big musical fan, and this one didn't do any favours for me in that genre department. It's watchable, but I just don't remember too much about it. I'm just very forgetful with musicals, to be honest. If they don't hit with me, unless you're Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or sorry, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or The Wizard of Oz. Tenebrae, probably my favourite Dario Argento film, one of my favourite giallos. This one definitely worked for me a lot more than Suspiria did, and I loved the whole reveal at the end. There's some pretty good kill scenes in this as well. Good little story about a writer whose killings in his books are actually happening. Now, this is going to cause a little bit of controversy because a lot of people will say this is not a horror movie, and I'm in two minds because this film did scare the shit out of me as a kid, and it is like a slasher film, but with guns. It's just the Terminator. Yeah, pretty dark movie from James Cameron. There's so many. Arnold Schwarzenegger is terrifying in this film, so I included it. But probably got the best scene ever in a movie for me, and that is the Technar scene. Yeah, brilliant film, one of the best movies ever made, in my top 20 easily. Don't worry, Terminator 2 is not in here. The Terrifier, the Bloody Duo, yeah, I really like these movies. The first one is just a really dark, gritty film with probably the best slasher kill scene I've ever seen. I know the second one's got a longer one in, but the first one, it's probably my favourite slasher kill scene, honestly, where he's cutting that girl in half, splitting her down the middle with the handsaw. Oh my god. Art the Clown is a brilliant horror icon already, isn't he? And the second one is really good as well. 2 hours and 20 minutes of carnage. Yeah, I love these films. Damien Leone has really brought to life this horror icon, and I can't wait for Terrifier 3 at the end of the year. Next up, we have one of my favourite physical media releases, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, I did own this on a standard Blu-ray, but it's my favourite horror movie of all time, so I had to grab this. Nice big thick box from Second Sight there. Yeah, this is just fantastic. I love everything about this movie. I've rewatched it so many times. I could gush about it all day. I just love Leatherface and his crazy family. I love how fast-paced this movie is. I've seen it on the cinema. I've seen it in 4K. I've seen it so many times, and I'll probably rewatch it again this year at some point. I watch it all the time. So that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not much more to be said. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Tobe Hooper's masterpiece. Not so much a masterpiece, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which is another nice box set here from Arrow Video. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, to be honest. It's just a very silly film. The first 10 minutes with that guy, Gunnar Rick, oh my god, he's one of the worst movie characters ever. I nearly never made it past the first 10 minutes with him going, woohoo, woohoo. I'm just like, oh my god, man, shut up. Didn't really like the design of the mask or anything there. I know Tobe Hooper was going for a more comedic approach, but I wasn't a big fan of it, to be honest. I've only seen it once, though. Next up, we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation. The Leatherface Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 has not been released here in the UK, but this one did recently, so I picked it up. As bad as it is, I wanted it in the collection. Even though I did prefer this over Leatherface 3, to be honest. It's very, very silly and stupid. Matthew McConaughey actually makes the film, but it's not very good. However, I think it's still so bad it's good. It's one of them films. I don't hate it. Next up, we have Texas Chainsaw 3D or whatever you want to call it. I hated the way they brought in extra Sawyer family members at the start of this film. I was just like, that did not happen. Stop trying to reinvent the original masterpiece. And I knew I was going to be in for a rough ride. And it's a watchable film, but yeah, it's not great. I mean, it's got one of the worst lines of dialogue in it ever. Do you think, cuz? And that other one, I'm a Sawyer. I'm just like, oh my god. Yeah, it's a pretty weak film. And we have the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003 remake, one of the better horror remakes out there. Enjoyed this a hell of a lot more, like, after a few more watches. At first, I was like, oh, it was alright, but I loved the first one so much, but it grew on me over time, and Arlie Ermey is the most terrifying thing about this, although I will say the Leatherface in this is quite terrifying as well. Thomas Hewitt, pretty good remake. Lovely directional choices in this, especially when they're filming the whole slaughterhouse part towards the end of the film. I love that bit and how it's directed. So yeah, pretty good remake, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. Okay guys, so I've just watched back a couple of the clips I've recorded because I'm doing little changes in between recordings, and there's a little bit of glare on a lot of these Blu-rays, so I do really apologise for that. I'm trying my best to avoid the glare. I can't see the camera. I'm going to be rectifying that on the next video for sure, and next time I do this collection, I'll be in a different room and everything. I plan to get lots of better lighting and everything, making the channel a little bit more professional going forward. So I do apologise for that, guys, but if you're still here watching it now, a couple of hours in, thank you very much for sticking with it, and I hope it hasn't been too much of a distraction. So we're on the final big segment, big pile I've got here now. And next we do have Them, which is a 1950s monster movie about giant ants. And I was quite liking this film, but I think the sound of the ants started to irritate me a little bit towards the end of the movie. But it's still pretty cool, and you know, I like watching these older monster movie classics really from that time, because there's just some charm about them. And that is number 1 in the premium collection, believe it or not. HMV had done. I don't know if they discontinued it now, unfortunately. Next up we have They Live from John Carpenter, now on 4K. Now, I bought this because I wanted to rewatch it again, because I thought it was just okay when I watched it, but a lot of people do really love this film. My friend Kyle absolutely loves this movie. I'm going to have to give it another go. I remember there being a crazy fight scene in there, but so, I love that a famous line of dialogue come out. Of course, I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. But yeah, cool concept. Just think it could have been executed a little bit better. Like I said, guys, I'm not the biggest John Carpenter fan in the world. I just find a lot of his movies good to pretty good. I mean, the only real standout to me are mainly Halloween, Christine. I'm not even going to say another one stands out, which I'll be getting to in just a second. The Thing, the original from Howard Hawks. I actually watched this, Howard Hawks production. I watched this for the first time last year, and I think it was pretty good, but there was a lot of characters in this movie, and I just didn't care about a lot of them. And yeah, I mean, it was just one of them. It's a little bit dated and stuff, but I do like it when the Thing monster actually appears for the first time. Like, I think he kicks a door down or something. That was pretty cool. But glad to have finally seen this one now. And this is the John Carpenter one I am talking about. Now, look, guys, I do think this is a good movie. When I say good to pretty good, I'd probably put this as a pretty good movie. But it's not a movie that's ever been one of my favourites. I know that is sacrilege, and a lot of people have this as their number 1 horror movie of all time and stuff. And I've watched it about 5 times now, and I just think it's a good 8 out of 10 movie, and 8 out of 10 is not bad at all. But I do plan on watching this again, because I really want to connect with it like a lot of people do, and maybe I'm just missing something. It's been a few years now, so I'm looking forward to going back to this. But Kurt Russell is awesome in this movie, and I love the scene where they're doing the test and everything. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to that. I will next time I do go back to that. There's gonna be a review on the channel, so look out for that. Next up, we have The Tortured, which is about a kid who goes missing or killed, and the parents kidnap the person who tortured them and torture them basically. And it's got a really cool ending. Bill Moseley in there. I don't think this is. I feel like it's a low budget movie that's been totally forgotten now, but it was all right. When I said Dawn of the Dead was the greatest zombie movie ever made, this is definitely the second best zombie movie ever made, in my opinion, and that is Train to Busan. My mate friend Jamie kept telling me to watch this all the time, and my god, man, this movie was incredible. It moves as fast as the bloody train does. It's a really fast-paced movie, and the zombies are awesome. They're trying to get to the other end of the carriage while the zombies take over the train, and there are characters in there who don't really want to help one another. It's more like a dog eats dog kind of world that they're living in there. It just shows how humans can really be terrible people. But yeah, you really do get behind the main protagonist and his daughter in this to try and get out of the situation. But this is a fantastic film. I absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, I wasn't a big fan of the sequel, Train to Busan Peninsula. This is a nice little thick box set there that my friend Jamie Powell kindly gave me a good price on. I was really looking forward to this, but I liked the start of it. I liked the end. All the middle ground, it just didn't work for me. There's like people who are betting on the zombies and these stupid games and stuff like that. See which humans can outrun the zombies and stuff. It just became a little bit too silly. And it didn't feel like the first movie at all for me, apart from the opening and the end scene. Everything in the middle, it just felt like a totally different film. So yeah, I was a bit let down by this, unfortunately. Sorry about that, guys. Got a bit of a block nose. Next up, we have Triangle. I've only seen this once when it first come out, and I remember thinking it was okay, but I was expecting like a full-on slasher film on a boat, and it wasn't quite that. It does something a little bit different, but yeah, it wasn't bad. My memory is a little bit vague on it though. Next up, we have the Troll collection. I had to own this, Troll 2. I used to watch it all the time on DVD and VHS back in the day. Even though it's a terrible movie, it's so bad it's good. I watched it with my parents once and they were laughing their damn asses off. Yeah, but I haven't seen Troll 1 yet. So I've heard it's pretty bad, and I believe there's a kid in that movie called Harry Potter who's actually magic. So I'm going to have to check that out at some point. But yeah, Troll 2, I just have to own this in the collection. As bad as it is, it's so bad it's good, man. It's got some of the worst acting you've ever seen. I love the documentary as well, Best Worst Movie. That is really worth a watch, and it's on there, I believe, in that collection. I watched it online ages ago, but I'm glad it's on that collection to own that now. Troll Hunter, I haven't watched this one yet. I always used to see this in CEX just staring at me for like 50p. I had a few people say it was a pretty good found footage film, but I've just never gotten to it. But I do like found footage, so yeah, I think I might enjoy this one. Two Witches, watched this one recently, and I thought it was okay. It's an anthology film, two different stories going on. One of them is about a witch staring at this woman in a restaurant, and after the restaurant, this woman's life goes down a little bit of a downward spiral. And the other story is about this witch who moves in with this woman, but she's like, the witch is like the roommate from hell, basically. And when she tells her to leave because she's fed up with her life goes down a downward spiral as well. There's a Rebecca Kennedy who plays the young witch in this. I don't know if she's actually on that cover, but I think, yeah, it's her. It's an artwork that you can't really see her properly. She was fantastic in this. I would like to see her in more future movies because she had these faces. She could pull these faces like these evil, real evil looking faces. But it was okay. It was just a little bit too art housey for me. I wish this movie kept it a little bit more simple. Under the Skin, only seen this the once, and this is when it first come out, and I wasn't really a fan of art house movies and stuff, and I'm still not really, but I think I'd have to go back and watch this again to really fully appreciate it. It reminded me of Species a little bit, more in an art house style, if you like. Scarlett Johansson looked awesome in this, though. I love the whole look of it in this, and how strange she acts towards the men in this movie, like she's just picking them up from the streets of Glasgow and stuff. But yeah, I'm going to have to watch this one again for sure. Uncle Peckerhead, this was such a fun film. The poster was always staring at me, and it's about this band who go on a road trip, and they bring along this cannibal called Uncle Peckerhead because they need his van. And at night, they don't know he's a cannibal, but at night he turns into one, and there's just murders happening around him all the time. But oh my god, Uncle Peckerhead, man, he's such a fun character. I highly recommend this if you like a good horror comedy. Next up, we have Underworld. I am not a fan of this franchise whatsoever. I picked these up really oh no, I was actually given them to me by my wife's brother because he gave me a load of Blu-rays that he was getting rid of. So I took these because I'd never seen them, and I just wasn't really a big fan of it. Very, very dark movie. Tries to be the Matrix with vampires at times. Kate Beckinsale is the best thing about these movies, to be honest. And then we have Underworld Evolution, which I did like a little bit better. I like the whole romance story going on with her. I can't even remember the guy's name who's in it. I think he's a pretty famous actor, though. Yeah, but anyway, her love story with him was okay. I liked that, got interesting. But I'm just not a big fan once again. I did watch these, though, when I was very, very sick. I was off work, and I just thought I'm going to throw some movies on, make a little dent in my collection, and I threw these on. It just made me feel worse. Underworld Rise of the Legions. I just wasn't a big fan of this one at all. This is the worst one out of the three. So unfortunately, not a big Underworld fan, guys. I have not seen the other two or three, whatever it is. Unfriended. I thought this was a pretty good film, kind of like Host, where it's all done on a computer screen, and it's about this girl who's bullied by this group of friends, and the girl seems to have come back online even though she's dead, and she's starting to terrorize this group of friends. Yeah, I quite like this one. I really want to check out Unfriended Dark Web as well, the sequel to this. But a lot of people don't like this movie, but I thought it was pretty good. The Universal Monsters box set. I plan to review a couple of these on the channel this year because we're getting a new Frankenstein film, we're getting a new Wolfman movie, so I'll probably do Frankenstein, maybe Bride of Frankenstein. I believe there's one of them coming as well, and I'll probably review the Wolfman because I want to go back and revisit some of these. I've only seen all of these once, but I enjoyed quite a few of them. My wife did too. I think Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and The Invisible Man were probably my favourites of all of these. I did not like The Mummy. I did not like Dracula. And Creature from the Black Lagoon was okay. Bride of Frankenstein was pretty good. And I actually like Phantom of the Opera. So yeah, it's a nice little collection to have. And a very, very important bunch of movies in the horror genre now, isn't it? Unhinged, this is more of a road rage thriller, really, but I threw it in there. Russell Crowe is quite terrifying in this movie. So a woman beeps him at the lights to hurry up and move, and it's the worst mistake she ever made, and he comes and terrorizes her and her family. Pretty fun movie. This is one of the first films I seen at the cinema after COVID, because COVID was going on and this was due to come out, and then they opened the cinemas up for a couple of weeks and I went to see this and Tenet. So yeah, it was great to get back in the cinema and watch this. The Uninvited, I have not seen this movie. I won it in a Criterion Collection giveaway. I just haven't watched it yet. I know it's a pretty famous film though. Urban Legends box set, yeah. The first one is okay. It's got some cool cast members in there, Brad Dourif and stuff. I just think some of the kills are a little bit over the top. Like, there's no way the killer could pull some of these kills off. The reveal's kind of, I like the reveal and stuff of who the killer is and stuff, but it's not bad. It's okay. Robert Englund in there as well, who's the red heron of the movie, really. Everyone thinks he's going to be the killer. Urban Legends Final Cut has got a great opening on an aeroplane, and then it's kind of just like a bittersweet, really, because it's like they're making a movie. It's got the worst ever killer costume in that, like this fencing costume. Urban Legends Bloody Mary was a little bit of a surprise, actually. I quite enjoyed that, even though it's not great. But I'm glad to own this little box set here, nice little collection, and it is a lovely addition from 88 Films. And 88 Films, please do more of these. Next up, we have Jordan Peele's Us, which is my favourite Jordan Peele film. I just loved the whole concept of it. It was like a breath of fresh air, something I hadn't really seen before. And it was quite terrifying to see these doppelgangers just knock at this family's house. But yeah, I really, really loved the ending of this. And really nicely directed by Jordan Peele. I know it's a little bit of an unpopular opinion because a lot of people say this is his worst movie. But I definitely think it's his best. Next up, guys, we do have Vacancy, starring Luke Wilson and Kate Beckinsale. Now, this is a really cool concept about a couple who go to this motel and they see a bunch of slasher horror movies. So they throw them on in the recorder just to watch them while they're staying there, and they realise that these people on the videotapes are being killed in the very room that they're staying in, and they are part of this big snuff like business of people selling these tapes, and they have to try and escape. And it's got a really creepy receptionist in there who kind of reminds me of Ned Flanders. Yeah, pretty good movie, this one. John Carpenter's Vampires. After a great opening scene, the movie kind of dwindled for me a little bit. I've got to be honest, guys, I'm not the biggest fan of what's his name, James Woods. I can take him or leave him. So some films I like him in, some films I'm just like, he sort of grates on me a little bit. And the other guy, Alec Baldwin's brother, is Daniel Baldwin. He is a terrible character in this movie. He's such an asshole. But it's okay. It's okay. It's watchable. I was just a little bit disappointed in it. The Vanishing, more of a thriller, this one, but the ending is quite harrowing, so I threw it in, about this woman who goes missing and her husband is desperate to find her, and he's looking for it over the course of a few years, and he finally confronts this killer, and I won't say too more than that. But a lot of people love this movie, so I picked it up, and I didn't love it as much as those people, but it was alright. Watcher, one of the most hidden gems from 2022. Mika Monroe is great in this movie. I absolutely love her. She's one of the greatest horror scream queens, I think. One that doesn't really get mentioned in the same breath as Anya Taylor-Joy and Mia Goth. I'm talking about the modern scream queens. And what's her name off Ready or Not? And The Babysitter. The name has eluded me. I said her name when I was talking about Ready or Not. Anyway, you know what I mean. They don't really mention Mika Monroe, and I know she's only really been in a couple, but she's great in this. She's great in It Follows. And this is a really good movie about this woman who moves to Romania, I believe, with her husband. And this guy, she feels like she's being watched everywhere she goes, from the guy over the street. And then every time she goes to shop and stuff, she thinks he's watching her. And it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed this one. I went to cinema on my own to watch this, and there was only about 3 people in the room. And I was just like, wow, I really enjoyed that experience. It was so good. It was just a movie that came out of nowhere. What We Do in the Shadows. I'm actually just started the TV series of this, and it's really funny. But yeah, this is a really funny film as well. Taika Waititi, who does like a mockumentary about a bunch of vampires living in a house. I love it when he opens the window at the start and he goes, "I'm just got to check if it's not daylight," and he goes, "Oh, okay, we're safe now because it's nighttime and stuff." Yeah, pretty funny film. The Wicker Man, not the biggest fan of this movie, guys. I've got to be honest. I know it's a stone cold classic and everyone loves it, and Christopher Lee's great in it. The ending was fantastic, though. I loved the ending, but I just wasn't a big fan of the film. It kind of dragged for me. Now, maybe I'll appreciate this on rewatch because I watched this a very, very long time ago. But it just didn't gel with me the first time, and I've never really had the itch to return to it. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, yes, one of the worst movies of 2023, but I still got a little bit of a kick out of it. I didn't hate the movie. It was pretty bad, but it was watchable. I liked some of the kills in here, especially when that piglet swings that sledgehammer at that woman in the swimming pool. But it is a bit of a cash grab, and we've got Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2 coming soon, so I'll be reviewing that on the channel. But I didn't hate it as much as a lot of people, but the costume design and stuff, it's not very good. One of my favourite movies of all time, The Witches. Used to watch this constantly as a kid back in the day. A little bit of different artwork on there, just show you guys. It's a nice thick box set, this. The original artwork, if you guys can see it, I hope there's no glare. But yeah, this is a nice thick box set with a booklet and stuff. Yeah, I've just always loved this movie. Very, very dark film for kids. It's like a horror you can introduce your kids to, but they could also be quite petrified of this. The first 5 minutes is really grim, where that girl gets kidnapped off the streets, Erica, by that witch who's been watching her for weeks. And of course, you got the auditorium scene where they all take their wigs off, and the Grand Witch takes that face off. She looks quite really creepy. But yeah, I love this movie. It's one of my most watched horror films of all time. And I actually done my most rewatched horror movies, and I threw this in there. I know it's a more of a family-friendly horror, but it's still great. The Witches, the remake, yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of this. Anne Hathaway was quite good in it, but there was a lot of stupid CGI thrown in, and I'm just like, why do you do this? The auditorium scene, it was just wearing a patch on the original. It was watchable, but I didn't really like it all that much. Wolf Creek, pretty brutal film. Mick, what's his name? Mick something. I'm really sorry, guys. They meet this guy called... Oh, I should know his name. Wolf Creek. I'm really sorry. He's one of my favourite horror villains, and I can't even remember his damn second name. I'm sure if you watch it now, you're shouting at the screen. But... Oh, God. That's really going to bug me. These characters who are backtracking across Australia, or they go and visit Wolf Creek, which is this big crater, and their car breaks down, and this guy called Mick something picks them up and offers to help, and their life just goes into a hell, basically. What ensues after that is quite terrifying. So yeah, based on true events, I don't know how true the events are. I read a story about his backpackers getting killed by this guy who tied them up and stuff. But it's based on that, I think. But yeah, it's a really good film. Quite enjoyed this one. Then we got Wolf Creek 2, which is a pretty good sequel. I think it goes a little bit far-fetched at the last 30 minutes where they go into this killer's den and stuff underground. But it's alright. I quite enjoyed it. I haven't checked out the TV series yet, though. The Woman, this is a really good indie movie about this family who find this feral woman and sort of try and kidnap her and keep her in the house. There's something really strange about the family. Obviously, that is bad enough, but the father is a real menacing character. Yeah, pretty good movie. The Woman in Black, I wasn't a massive fan of this. It was alright. It's more of a family-friendly ghost movie with some really good jump scenes in there, but I'm not really a fan of this setting, like this old style, old English Gothic setting. Daniel Radcliffe was pretty good in this. It was alright. Wrong Turn, the remake, I actually really enjoyed this one. I like the way they made it into like these mountain people instead of cannibals. That really worked for me. Love the ending of this movie. So yeah, I don't own the other Wrong Turn films. I was going to pick up the box set, and a lot of people advised me not to because it's heavily cut, the German box set. And I kind of don't know what to do now with owning these films. But would like to pick them up at some point. Because I've never seen the franchise. I've only ever seen the first one and this. So I would really like to check out all the others. I heard they're a little bit gnarly and not very good, but maybe I'll get something out of them. So yeah, I really enjoyed this remake. I thought it was excellent. Next up, we have X from Ty West, which was one of my favourite movies of 2022, one of my favourite A24 films. Love the cast in this movie with Kid Cudi, Mia Goth, Jenna Ortega, of course, about these characters who want to get into the porn industry, so they go and make these porn films, and they rent this farm off this old couple, but there's something about the old couple that are quite sinister. It's a fantastic film. I love the whole 70s look of it. Kid Cudi steals the show. Fantastic film. I loved X. I really did. And then we have Pearl, which is just a very clever prequel, which shows the old lady on the farm when she's a younger girl, played by Mia Goth once again. Yeah, this one, it's like a technicolor nightmare, basically, the best way I can describe it. Ty West just has a real good look to it. Yeah, she will stop at nothing to become famous, put it that way. It's weird how these movies just connect with one another. I can't wait. I cannot wait for Maxine. It's my #1 most anticipated movie of the year, and bring it on. I believe there's a trailer coming very soon, so I'm really looking forward to that. All set in the 80s in Los Angeles. Man, sign me the fuck up. I can't wait to watch these two movies again. I'm thinking about maybe watching them next to Maxine, but I've really got this urge to do it soon, so I don't know if I can hold out that long. Now, I threw this one in here because it is the only one that tries to do a little bit of horror, and that is X-Men: The New Mutants. I wasn't a massive fan of this, but I was really anticipating it going in because it sounded like a Nightmare on Elm Street 3, but with X-Men, all these kids in the mental hospital and stuff. Anya Taylor-Joy absolutely steals the show. She was by far the best character in this movie, and I hadn't really seen her in much before this. But yeah, it feels like a bit of an empty movie. It feels like it's just these characters and one nurse in the entire, mental hospital. It just felt empty, and the CGI at the end really ruined it. It's okay, it's watchable, but I don't love this film or anything. Extra, I watched this on Prime not long ago. Well, actually a couple of years ago now. I thought it was pretty good, where this kid's father has gone missing and he comes back a few years later. And I think you kind of don't, there's something mysterious about him. But yeah, pretty good low budget movie. So I had to pick it up on Blu-ray. You're Next, a home invasion movie turned completely on its head. Shawnee Vision is an absolute kick-ass final girl in this. So these group of masked people break into the house, and she sort of takes revenge on them and fights back, and there's some really gruesome deaths in this. Really, really great film. I highly enjoyed You're Next. Gonna drop the Blu-ray there, guys. Zombie Flesh Eaters, yes, probably my third favourite zombie film, next to Dawn of the Dead and Train to Busan. Really love this one. All takes place on this island, and I love the music that's just constantly playing in the background. I love how the zombies get up out of the grave very, very slowly, and they use like real insects and stuff. It's just not CGI that we get today. And there's a fight with a shark and a zombie in this, which is really cool. Real retro zombie movie, this one. And my nan used to babysit us years ago, and this is what she brought. She used to bring this and Dawn of the Dead, and we'd get loads of munchies and watch them. It was great. Next up, we have Zombieland, which is a pretty cool movie. I love the cast in this. You got Emma Stone, Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, and Abigail Breslin, of course. Yes, name eluded me there. But it's just a real good post-apocalyptic zombie movie with lots of comedy thrown in. And Tallahassee, played by Woody Harrelson, is awesome. What a great character. Then we have Zombieland Double Tap, which I was a pretty big fan of as well. Yeah, it just does more of the same, but it's just a fun movie. Both of them are. So yeah, really solid sequel there. And that is it, guys, for my entire horror movie collection. Now, I do have a couple of TV shows over there that are horror related, but all it is really is The Walking Dead up to season 5. sorry, season 6, and we also have Bates Motel, and I've only got the first 3 seasons. I need to complete that set, so I didn't really think it was worth showing them off, but I highly recommend Bates Motel. It's fantastic, one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. So I hope you all enjoyed this, guys. Please leave a comment down below what you thought of this collection. I'm sorry about some of the glare on these Blu-rays. That was really unfortunate, but that will be rectified next time I do this collections, because I'm going to try and do it every year. So look out for more content on this channel, guys. Like I said, it's not a physical media based channel, it's a horror based channel. So if you love horror and you like my thoughts on some of these movies, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It would really help me out. And if you stayed this far, God bless you. Thank you so much. Hope you all enjoy whatever you're doing with the rest of your day. Take care, and I'll see you on the next video.